Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Irish Breakdown podcast. Got my caffeine here. Got some iced tea. We're rocking, and we're rolling, folks. I know we're super pessimistic, but we're gonna do this show because we do it every week, and we're here for you all, guys, through the good times and the bad times. Monday, Notre Dame Football Mailbag. Previously, the Friday Free for All Mailbag that has been moved to Monday. Thank you all for joining us. That is Brian Driscoll. I am Ryan Roberts here at IrishBreakdown.com. We are here to answer any and every question in reason that you have for us in today's mailbag. If it's your first time on a mailbag, you could please put a mailbag or an MB in front of the question. It'll help Brian to distinguish between what is just general conversation happening in the chat or a mailbag question that you want answered. You guys can steer us in any direction you want. We can talk about Notre Dame's 31-23 loss to Clemson this past weekend. We could talk about the general state of Notre Dame football. We could talk about college football. We talk about the NFL. You can ask us what our favorite holiday treat is. We'll ask anything for you all because we love you guys out there in IB Nation, because you guys are still here even when some things aren't going in the best of directions with Notre Dame football. But you guys are always here as we are on a Monday.
These are the real ones, Ryan. These are the real ones right here. Yes, the ones that are here on a Monday after a tough loss, and yeah, these are the real ones, you know. So and the real ones are like me, where they're all engaged in this chat, but then they're also, you know, kind of got that side eye going over here in the women's basketball game. Hannah Hidalgo's already doing her thing already. So, but man, a lot to talk about today, Ryan. A lot to talk about.
Sir.
It was a wild weekend of college football, and I guess my big thing is I'm annoyed because I would have loved to have been able to talk about Notre Dame getting a win in what was an otherwise wild week. It took away my ability to talk trash to LSU. It took away my ability to talk trash to USC, all of it.
Yep.
And, but, you know, we got a lot of great questions. So why don't we – and I think Raymond Harton's starting us off great, man. Go Irish, beat Wake. Absolutely, Ray. But we got got a little bit before we're going to jump into the talk about Wake Forest. But appreciate your super chat, buddy.
Bye weeks stink, Raymond, but thank you for being here, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
We got AST12321. Thank you so much for the super chat. If you were limited to one change, not involving staff or roster, that you could have made to help improve the offensive output, what would you try?
If I could only do one, I think the thing that would be most beneficial to this team, Ryan, would be an offense that's much more geared around mixing up tempos and being multiple from a tempo standpoint. Like right now, I'll acknowledge the fact that right now, Notre Dame is shorthanded on offense, pass catchers, and will be the rest of the season. I mean, you don't have Jaden Thomas. You don't have Mitchell Evans. You're playing a bunch of young players, and that's all fair. Those are all legitimate things to look at and say, hey, that's going to somewhat limit just how much you can do. But when you say that, it's like, okay, well, then you can't keep doing what you've been doing all year minus your two, quote-unquote, top pass catchers, right, which Jaden Thomas was before he got hurt. And Mitchell Evans certainly was before he got hurt, and then say, but man, I'm frustrated that they're not performing better. Well, okay, you know that. Rico has been struggling for weeks to get open on vertical-oriented routes. Jaden Greathouse has proven he's not comfortable right now. I think he eventually could be, but right now is not super comfortable, also while battling hamstring injuries playing outside. So you need to do things to help them out. And if I can only pick one, it comes down to mixing up my 21 and 20 personnel more. It would come down to potentially implementing RPOs at a higher degree, or this. And I think this for me, Ryan, would be most overall beneficial, is just being willing to use tempo more to kind of protect your offensive line, which is struggling, and also your receiving core, which is, you know, having a tougher time getting the kind of separation that you're going to need. Even though they were open more than the stats show, Ryan, they're still not getting great separation with any consistency against good defenses. And so, yeah, that would be my answer, right? I'm very curious to kind of hear what yours would be.
That's one that we've talked about a ton, and I agree completely on it. I think that this team has just kind of lacked enthusiasm offensively as a team at some points this year. Like, I mean, there's been times where Notre Dame's offenses look pretty good too, where I'm just like, all right, can we keep the momentum? You want to get moving a little bit? Like, let's work this momentum a little bit into our game plan. And it's just been absent. It's been absent. I mean, if I had to make one decision that wasn't just the mixing of tempos into this offense and different paces, I would say, Brian, like the one thing that's been a little frustrating to me is just from a passing game design perspective. Like you already mentioned it, Notre Dame doesn't really have anybody outside right now that you trust that is consistently winning outside vertically. Like, you just don't really have it. So guys, hey, how about we implement some stuff to make it easier for them, right? Maybe some switches, maybe some different types of strategies, maybe some levels, maybe something else to help make it easier on your offense to create those explosive outside. I don't think there was a great answer to the lack of explosives outside for this team. I think that for the most part, the plays that have been explosive in the passing game for the most part this year have been your guys are just much more talented than their dudes. I'm talking about like Central Michigans of the world, right? Or it's been an after catch situation, right? It's a bias, breaks something down the sideline, Chris Tyree on a scramble drill. It just hasn't been anything that I'm just like, because I'm watching every week, Brian, because I'm like, I watched the LSU Alabama game a little bit on the floor of my daughter's bedroom, by the way. That was fantastic. But I'm watching, I'm like, yes, Malik Neighbors is very talented. Yes, Brian Thomas is very talented. But you know what LSU also does in that offense? They do a lot of switches. They do a lot of stuff where you're crossing face, where guys are kind of getting picked off. They're very creative with how they're getting guys open. I just think the creativity in the passing game has just been something that I've just been watching this year where I'm just like, don't like this, man. Like, if Notre Dame's not winning off of God-given ability to create explosives, I don't think the coaches have really done a great job to help them create explosives. Like, that's just been something that's been very frustrating to me. Very frustrating.
Ryan, you nailed it. You don't
Yep.
have the talent that LSU has at receiver. You don't have the talent Florida State has at receiver. So why are you asking your guys to be one-on-one winners? And this is something that was true last year and previous years. And in the years you had a Chase Claypool, a Will Fuller, a Miles Boykin, you could get away with that. But then years when you didn't have that, you're like, oh, the receivers suck. Oh, okay, even if we grant that premise, even more reason to not be doing what you're doing right now.
Right.
And that's the thing that frustrates me, right? Because you're absolutely right. LSU staff is doing a really nice job offensively of doing things to design guys to get guys open. We talked about this with Sarkisian in 2020 when he had Devontae Smith. He still did a lot. I mean, he could have literally just lined up Devontae Smith at one spot and said, cover him. And most teams wouldn't be able to do it. But they didn't just rely on that. They said, we're going to move him around. I mean, I remember there was one game, I think it might have been the SEC title game, Ryan, where by the middle of the second quarter, it was wild breaking it down. I had seen him line up in number 1 to the boundary, number 1 to the field, number 2 to the boundary, number 2 to the field, number 3 to the field. Like, I had literally seen him line up it took a quarter and a half before Alabama cycled him through every potential position that they could put him in. And sometimes it was using him as a decoy. Sometimes it was trying to get him clear. And they were able to do things to get him wide open. Like, I remember what was the one touchdown pass they had against Florida? They ran like a post route and then like a crosser, like a high over, and then he kind of came on an over underneath. And it's like, how do you let that get wide open? Because you schemed them up. That's why. And Notre Dame's just running stuff where it's like, okay, guys, go in. And they're just not able to do consistently enough. Because, like, I talked in the show yesterday, like Tobias Merriweather was getting open at times yesterday, but he's not getting open like all the time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it's like there's 3-4 balls that should have come his way. But when but it's like, imagine if that was happening and you were doing other things to bring him on certain, like, when was the last time we saw Notre Dame run a vertical clear with an in-breaking route by number 1? When was the last time you saw Notre Dame do that?
Right.
I can't. So it's like that's something that, why are we not seeing this? Right. I mean, so it's very frustrating, Ryan. And we could point to 7 or 8 or 9 things that we could talk to, and which makes it harder to say one. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, because we can discuss the talent of the receivers and the offensive line, and Pat Coogan's not that good, or Rocco's not that good. And those are all fair conversations to have. But my point is if that's true, it's even more frustrating that you're doing what you're doing. That's
coach's job is to put players in positions to make plays and make it easier on them, right? I mean, I'm just struggling to understand why I'm watching some schools that, admittedly, your wide receivers are better than Notre Dame's right now. There's no doubt about that. But also, it's not just winning off of just pure talents at LSU. Like, Mike Denbrock and that staff are doing some really good things to make things easy for Malik Neighbors. Like, I saw him catch a wide open touchdown this past weekend. It wasn't because he was so much better than the defense. It's because they confused the defense and got him a wide open ball down the field. I'm just like, you made it easy for him. Make it easy.
Right. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Yeah, we're on the same page.
We had Banami, with the super chat. Do you think not having a true strength coach during the season affected the players' play in a noticeable way?
I think so. And I'll say it this way, Ryan, even if you don't think that it made a difference physically, let's just say, like, guys, at the end of the day, Matt Bayless had already kind of created the end season game plan, and they're kind of carrying it out. We've talked about this, Ryan, and I don't know if you had experiences like this in your conversations with Notre Dame players or not, or even players from other teams who had strength coaches they liked. But I remember being at the not the pro day, but the combine a few years ago, and just listening to the Notre Dame players talking about Matt Bayless and the job he did. And it wasn't so much that they could necessarily point to, well, what exactly is he doing that you like so much? It was they just trusted him implicitly. And I even remember one time talking to a dad who's like, yeah, my kid's, dealing with some kind of physical thing, but Coach Bayless said this, and so he's just gonna keep doing it. And lo and behold, Coach Bayless was right. The guy worked through the lower body thing, and all of a sudden, by November, he was rocking and rolling, even though he kind of felt like, dude, I'm in fall camp and I'm already kind of feeling like I'm worn out. There just was an implicit trust there. And I don't think that's there. I think that at least mentally, there's not that same trust in what they're doing. And then you look at, practically speaking, they haven't gotten stronger as the season wore on, which was almost always the case under Matt Bayless. They've had a lot of those strength conditioning injuries. And what I mean by that are a good strength conditioning program, you're not going to have a ton of hamstring and quad injuries, right? That's just usually something you don't see a ton of. You're talking about over half the receiving corps has missed practices this year in a chunk of missed games because of hamstring injuries, not landing on your shoulder, not spraining an ankle, not getting a knee rolled up on, not like the Avery Davis, just knee popping out. I mean, on the field, there's nothing you can do about that. It's quad injuries, it's hamstring injuries, it's stuff like that. And, that makes me question a little bit, but yeah, the things that you normally expect to see from a well-coached football team, the run game getting progressively worse, the muscle, the type of muscle injuries. Yeah, I think not having a true strength coach has certainly affected Notre Dame this season.
I think the recovery is the biggest thing that would lead me to saying yes. I mean, you already hit on it, but when you're having those types of just kind of, it's the hamstring especially is one where it's just like, that's a maintenance issue, right? Like there's a issue every single day. And from a recovery perspective, probably, I mean, why is Jane Thomas supposedly back? And then it's just keeps no pun intended, but it keeps hamstringing him the rest of the season, right? Where it's like, even when you do have those types of injuries, it's up to the strength and conditioning staff to get them back to the level that you need them getting back to. And those injuries have also just kind of, and I know hamstrings not a perfect example because hamstrings can linger. Like that's kind of a tricky thing, especially for wide receivers, but it's the strength and conditioning coach's job to get them back, the maintenance, the repair, the rehabilitation side of things to getting players back. So yeah, I think it's had its issues. I think it's definitely had its issues. I have no idea what they're going to do there with Fred Hale in the interim, but I'm very curious to see what just happens next with that strength program after the season.
I mean, everybody's talking about, oh, you need to fire this guy, that guy. I mean, that's the most important decision Marcus Freeman will make this season. It won't be, does he fire the offensive coordinator or not, or the O-line coach or not, or who replaces Al Golden if he goes to the NFL, or any other conversation we're having about coaches. It's not to say that those aren't important, but there is nothing more important than making that hire, because that's one we know he's going to have to make this offseason. That's the one spot that's open.
There's also a mental side to the strength coaching thing where if a player feels like they're being prepared well and they feel strong, they play better, right? Especially for college kids. I mean, we're talking about kids that are 18 to 24 years old now with the COVID thing, where if those kids feel confident, they usually play better. I mean, that's just, that's kind of an injection of positivity and confidence into you. So yeah, I think it matters. It definitely matters, especially on the mental side of things, on top of the physical side of things. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. We had another one from Iden Banami. Thank you so much. Why do people keep saying get Steve Angeli reps, but most of us think Kenny Minchey will beat him next year? In my opinion, play Kenny Minchey much more than Angeli. Time to look forward.
Ryan, I can understand this sentiment, but I don't know that I can get on board with it, because clearly right now the coaching staff has felt that Steve Angeli's more prepared to go lead this team should Sam Hartman go down. That's why he's the backup quarterback. Now, is Kenny coming along? Yes, he is. Talked to another source last night that said he's still building, right? But he's not there yet. He's got a less than a year than Steve has in the system, and right now they feel if Sam goes down, Steve's that guy. And so I'm all for it. Steve doesn't deserve the opportunity to play. He's earned it, in my opinion. And this is coming from someone who's not a believer in Steve Angeli as a starting quarterback at Notre Dame. But the fact of the matter is he's earned it. He's earned it on the practice field, for just learning the system. But then also when he has gotten his opportunities, he's made the most of them. So I understand why people feel that way. And there's some Notre Dame fans that still think he's a starting caliber quarterback at Notre Dame. And I don't. But give him a shot to see if he is or not. If anything, if Sam's not playing, I'd say play both of them. That's what I would do. As I say, play both of them. But as of right now, Sam Hartman's still your starting quarterback. And that my focus, Ryan, is going to be on the next two games of how can you get Sam Hartman to finish off on a strong note, because the team needs that. I mean, that's the thing. The team needs that moving forward.
Well, the Kenny Minchie thing is a little bit of an interesting conversation too, because he's played 2 games now so far in his career. So you have 2 games left of regular season and then a bowl game. So if your thought process is purely Kenny's your guy from here on out from the last 3 games, that means that you burn his red shirt, though. That means that you would burn the 4 games that he's allowed to play. And I would rather not do that still, especially this far into a season. I would rather maintain that red shirt. So, I mean, would I want him to see 2 games potentially of Kenny Minchie down the stretch and play the full 4? Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% like to see that. But I'm not willing to burn his red shirt and just say, it's Kenny time the last 3 games of the season, because that's just, I think that's ill use of a potential red shirt, in my opinion.
Can I ask a follow-up, Ryan? Are you saying Kenny time, as far as part of a rotation, or are you saying you wouldn't want to see them say, Kenny, you're the dude, you're the starting quarterback the next 3 games?
The last 3 games of the season, it's just Kenny, is because I think that you need to be, I think you need to be careful with, if you even started Kenny 1 game, I'd be cool with that if you've made that decision down the stretch, but I don't want to see him play all 3 games and just be the guy all 3 games, because then that's burning the red shirt, right? I want to maintain that red shirt and still get him some experience.
So you think there's
with Steve, he's a redshirt freshman. You're not maintaining eligibility anymore.
Right.
He's going to have less eligibility. It just is what it is. So
just one more follow up, because I'm thinking through this, right? Because there's a lot that goes into this, because I'm back and forth on how I feel about your answer. I'm not disagreeing or agreeing. I think there's pros and cons to both. One is, if you decide Kenny's your guy, you play him last 3 games, you're getting him ready for next year, and that means you anticipate him being a 3-year starter, and then he's done. The flip side is what you're saying is, but if you could also have a scenario where you play him the final 2 games, he still redshirts, and then he can start for 4 years.
Right.
So that would be the conversation. My thing is what do you think the odds would be that he would be a 4-year starter and stay through 4 years at Notre Dame? Even if he plays great, let's say he's the guy. Right. And this isn't a setup question, Ryan. This is a genuine. I'm curious to get your opinion. I don't know the answer to that, honestly.
Well, Notre Dame's offense has been to a level over the last couple of years where, I am not counting on Kenny Minchie being a 3-year and done guy. I'm not counting on that. Fair. I think it's much more likely he's a 4-year player and he continues to play after this, right? So I'm there for maintaining the red shirt, because until Notre Dame's offense gives me optimism that he can be a 3 and done, I'm not worrying about him being a 3 and done. I'm not worried about that.
That's an interesting take, Ryan. Let me ask you this. Because this is a fun conversation. Because again, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. I kind of tend to lead towards you, because I don't know. He's 6'1.5". He doesn't have, Trevor Lawrence's arm strength, or Justin Fields' athleticism, or those guys' size or whatever. So there's a chance he could be a 4-year starter. I mean, it's not a given. I'm fair. I'm good with that. I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
I just want the option on the table.
I get it.
I want
I'm with you. Let me ask you this, just to sort of a little caveat, a fun little caveat. If you knew, if I looked in the future and I said, Ryan, the next 3 years, Notre Dame is going to make changes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that you and I know. Would you feel better then, or is it just no matter what, you still want the Is the offense the deal breaker for you, but you're already leaning
Right now.
towards that anyway?
Yeah, I mean, right now it is because I think I'm a victim to what I've seen, right? Like I keep saying in my mind of, oh, I think it could get better. I think it could better,
Right.
but like, what proof do I have that it's going to get
You're a
any better? I
prisoner
have
of the
zero
moment.
proof to that.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
if
Yeah, that's
if you
fair.
could tell me without a doubt, like you went into the future and your crystal
Right.
ball is out or whatever, that like, hey, they're going to score 40 points per game the next 2 years. They're going to be a really good offense. That might change the equation,
Sure.
but
But even then you
yeah,
said might.
might,
Because
yeah.
I think that's my thing is looking at from the NFL draft standpoint. I don't know that he's going to have those measurables that even with all that production are going to make people say top 15 pick.
Right. I mean,
Like
because the thing is, the reason I think that you strengthen the quarterback room so much, just in general, like I was even thinking about this the other day. I'm just like, yeah, 2025, you're going to have Kenny, CJ Carr, and Deuce Knight in the building, right, in the same room. And like, guys, I hate to break this to you. I think all three of those guys could be the guy at Notre Dame, could be really good. But the odds are is that one or two of those guys are not going to be the guy at Notre Dame, more than
right.
likely. Like the odds say that not all three of those guys are going to become what we envision that they could be at Notre Dame. That's what the odds tell you. So in that regard, like even if Kenny, like even if you get Kenny experience down the road or this season going into next year, is it a foregone conclusion that CJ Carr doesn't come in and is just like, dude, CJ's better than Kenny? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like, there's just so many
Right.
variables that I think are going to come into play that I just want to maintain that red shirt just in case, right? Like, I want to go into next year of Kenny Minchie has 4 years on the table, CJ Carr has 4 years on the table, and let's let this thing ride and see what happens.
I'd even be willing to consider doing, let's just say Sam's out, right? Because again, we're not calling for Sam to be benched. I'm not calling for that, Ryan. I don't think you're calling for that either, correct? Let's just say come to find out Sam has an injury we don't know about and he's got to shut it down, right?
Yep.
And it's the
Yep.
right thing to do, just for argument's sake. I would be okay kind of doing what Michigan did early last year, which is give Cade McNamara the first start and then give JJ the second start and see who plays the best, see who the offense responds to the best kind of thing, and then have that guy start the bowl game. Because then if you do that way, Ryan, and Kenny plays the second game, even if he starts the bowl game, that's only 4 games. So he could still have his red shirt. I mean, so if you're going to do something, I just feel like Steve Angeli, and this is coming, I mean, these are 2 guys right here that are Kenny Minchie guys. As far as, I mean, if you look at who's on the roster right now, we both think Kenny Minchie can be a dude. We both had him as a top 100 quarterback. I also believe, Ryan, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're both not guys that necessarily think Steve Angeli is that guy, that he's more of a good backup than he is a starter.
I think if Steve Angeli's a starter, it could be solid, but I always think that you could feel like you could do better at that position.
So
that's kind of how
we're on the
envision it.
same page, right?
Yeah.
He'll be leadership and hand the ball off and so we're on the same page. But still, even with that in mind, Steve has earned that opportunity if it were to come, in my opinion. Yep. I've said if Sam's not an option, I just think both of them should play. It shouldn't be one or the other, in my opinion.
And even in this scenario, if you just say like Sam can't play and Steve's going to get the reins the end of the season, that shouldn't mean that going into this offseason, that's not an open competition. I don't think it will be that situation, but like it better not be that situation. Like even if Steve goes out on balls the last 3, it's like, dude, it's still an open competition in the offseason. Like it's still got to be open.
And that's my fear, Ryan, of making that move is I feel like the staff would do that. I think they would take hey, look, Steve played, he didn't turn the ball over. Let's just trust the older guy who's not going to make more mistakes. Kenny's more of a risk. We haven't seen as much of him. And I just think this coaching staff right now, mainly because of the head football coach, is very risk averse. If I'm using that, I believe I'm using that correctly. When it comes to the offense, that's just, yes, I am using that correctly.
Someone asked me yesterday or today, I can't remember what it was. It was just a friend that had asked me about like what changes I think Notre Dame will make offensively. And honestly, Brian, the only changes I think they're going to make, and I know we'll talk about more of this tomorrow as far as like what we hope that they'll make, right? But the only differences I think they'll make is that I think, and this is just my opinion, that a coaching staff that is very conservative and very risk adverse, to your point, will look at this game this past weekend and be like, what can't we do based upon that? Or what do we need to do? And they're going to look at the 2 turnovers that they threw, the 2 interceptions that they threw, and be like, can't do that. That was a killer. That was the difference between winning a football game. And my answer would be, sure, in practice, but like also that wasn't the biggest issue on Saturday. It wasn't the biggest issue, but they're going to look at that and be like, you know what? We need to be more risk adverse. We need to make sure that we don't turn the football over. So what's that mean? Probably run the football more, probably just control
safe
the line
throws,
of scrimmage more,
yeah,
safe
throws,
throws,
right.
And that's not going to fix anything, because that is going to win the last 2 games against Wake Forest and Stanford, because they're not great football teams. But ultimately, when we're talking about this type of game again next year, right? Well, Texas A&M is who Notre Dame opens with on in the first game of the season next year. Do you think playing this brand of football is going to consistently beat those types of teams? I don't. I don't think it's going to consistently win those type of teams. Will it beat them sometimes? Yes, it will beat them sometimes. Will it beat them all the time? No, I don't think it will. I don't think it's sustainable in today's game. Don't think it's sustainable.
Well, I want to bring up this, Ryan, because I have been infuriated by some of the responses I've seen from Notre Dame fans about this. Stephen Martin says, Brian, that's why I said on Twitter that a matchup with LSU would be a loss. I have zero faith in this offense. Guys, are we just going to ignore the fact that 9 days ago we watched this team score 58 points against a team that has a significantly better defense than LSU? Are we going to ignore that?
Defense is terrible, man.
Yes. Are we going to, like, Alabama had scored 40 points on one team all year. That was Middle Tennessee, who has one of the worst defenses in college football at the Group of 5 level. Listen, Notre Dame's offense has struggled against really good defenses. That's it. This is not an offense that struggles against Stanford 2022. This is not an offense that struggles against Marshall 2022. That's not who this team is. This team has struggled against Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, and Clemson. 4 top 40 defenses. When they're not playing a top 40 defense, they dominate. That's the frustrating thing, Ryan. That's what annoys me. Yeah. And let me make one other thing clear. They played another top 40 defense because they've played 5 this year, and they hung up 45 on them and had almost 500 yards of offense. That's NC State, right? So, but that's the anomaly against top defenses. LSU's defense, there's no other way of saying it, Ryan. It sucks. It's terrible.
It's bad. Yeah.
And
it's really badly coordinated too. It's really bad. I don't know if you saw this, but like I was watching this game, like I said, and they are using Harold Perkins, who's one of the best attacking weapons in college football, as an overhang in this football game against Alabama. You are just taking him out of the play. What are you doing? I don't understand I didn't understand the Matt House love before the season. And I certainly don't understand the Matt House love, if there is any left, man. That has been we're talking about misusing talent. Matt House has misused talent, man. Because I look at that LSU defense, I'm like, hey, there's still talent there, right? I mean, like Harold Perkins is a dude. The interior defensive line has a lot of guys on it, and yet you are just like we're going to be terrible.
This isn't a vintage defense talent-wise for LSU. That I don't think that's what you're saying, but it's not this. It should definitely not be this.
There's still a swarm of NFL players. Right. Mason Smith and Harold Perkins is probably going to be a top 15 pick next year. And you got Mekhi Wingo, who's a really good player. Like there's still talent on that defense. And for whatever reason, they are misusing guys. They're misusing talent.
But the facts are this, guys. You can be in your feelings however you want about Notre Dame against Clemson, and you can be in your feelings however you want about Notre Dame's inability to play well against good defenses. And I'm with you on those. But what we can't do is this overly dramatic, ignore what's happened all year and just respond emotionally. LSU also lost this weekend. Notre Dame's not the only team that lost this weekend. LSU got beat by Alabama. Alabama's a good football team. They're not a very good offense. And they haven't been all year. Somebody said in another chat, yeah, but they seem to be getting better. No, they're not. In the 3 games coming into the game against LSU, Ryan, they were averaging 25 offensive points per game. They had scored 26 points against Texas A&M. 2 of those were on a safety. They scored 24 points against Arkansas. They scored 34 points as a team against Tennessee, but one of those was a fumble return for a touchdown. They had it go from beginning with Texas So after Middle Tennessee, before LSU, they had scored over 30 offensive points once. And that was against the Mississippi State defense. It's also not very good. Right. So, and that team just went for 42 points against LSU, had a season high 7.4 yards per play, and a season high of 507 total yards. Prior to that, their two highest games of the year, Ryan, were 431 against Middle Tennessee and 415 against Arkansas. And if you haven't been paying attention to this year, Arkansas's defense isn't very good. It's not terrible, but it's not good. And so Alabama's offense is much worse than Notre Dame's in every metric. They rushed for 23 yards against Texas A&M in a win. Their offense isn't nearly as good as Notre Dame's. They've had 3 games now of over 400 yards of offense. That's it. Notre Dame is averaging over 400 yards of offense. So we can be in our feelings about this, what we saw Saturday. But anyone saying they're going to get blown up by LSU, anything can happen in the game, right? But if you're going to go off of what you've seen, right, there's zero evidence that Notre Dame's offense would struggle against LSU. Zero. Do you know why? Because no one's offense struggles against LSU. And teams with a lot worse offenses than Notre Dame have moved the ball and scored on LSU. That's a fact. So unless Notre Dame decides to start running the triple option like Army, they got a pretty good chance of scoring on LSU. That's just the reality of it. And it's just, this is just not and Stephen, please don't take this as disrespect, but that's just not a rational view to have. It's an emotional one. And I'm okay with the emotional part, but you have no data or experience. We're just going to ignore the fact that Notre Dame scored 106 points in the 2 previous games and be upset that they played bad against Clemson. I just, that's just not rational to me. I'm sorry. I don't know. You have anything to add to that, Rye? You ready to move on?
I'm ready. I'm good.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about LSU today. Tyler Evans with the super chat. What did you think of the Alex Grinch firing yesterday? It's been deserved for like 4 years, but sure, let's do it yesterday. It's
sure.
Tyler. I've talked about Alex Grinch. Alex Grinch would not have been my defensive coordinator definitely coming into this season. I guess it took a 52 spot from Washington in multiple games. Now it seems seemingly in a row where literally, guys, they give up 49 points to Cal the week before, and Cal is not a good offense.
That's way worse than giving up 52 to Washington.
Yes.
Way
yeah. Washington's a really good offense. Giving that up to Cal, though, you had to score a 50 spot against Cal to win the football game. If you didn't have your offense, you would have gotten murdered against Cal. Like, it was just really, really bad. So is it deserved that he's out? Yeah, it's been deserved for a while. Alex Grinch is a guy that is just not a good defensive coordinator at the level that he's been at. Going from Oklahoma to now USC, like, that guy doesn't deserve to be a defensive coordinator at 2 of the blue blood programs in college football. Like, he doesn't deserve to be there. It's just, I feel like it's a little bit of you're playing poorly. And I think that this was the move that was going to kind of take some of the attention off. I'm very interested because there's been a lot of talk about Lincoln Riley to the NFL potentially this offseason. I'm interested to see if this is a kind of an indicator that he might be coming back, because maybe he actually cares a little bit about his coaching staff now, a little bit. I don't know. I'm not making sense of it for the long term, but the short term is the guy should have been fired a long time ago. And I guess it took 2 really bad performances in a row where, yeah, it's just, he's not a good defensive coordinator, guys. He didn't deserve to have this job in the first place. So
no, I never enjoy a guy getting fired unless he's a bad guy. And I don't know Alex Grinch. I don't know if he's a good guy, bad guy, or anything. I feel like the results warranted him no longer being the defensive coordinator. I think doing so with 2 games left is just petty and silly and just adds to the drama that has been USC season.
I think you were trying to take some of the bad light off of you a little bit and be like, defense is the problem, get him out of here, type of thing.
Right.
Like, okay,
right.
Okay.
And, up until the fumble at the end of the game, Washington's defense had held USC to 14 points in the 10 points in the second half, right?
USC
they were up
Washington?
Yeah, USC had held Washington to 10 points in
Okay.
the second half prior to the fumble by Caleb Williams late in the game because it was 35-28 at halftime, right?
Yep.
And then it was 45-42 when Caleb fumbled that ball. And then they punched it in on a short field. So, hate to break it to you, but second half of that game, your offense was the problem, not your defense. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter who he's going to hire. The problem at the end of the day is still about Lincoln Riley and the way that he runs a program. And you're always going to struggle putting a good defense on the field the way that he coaches. So unless he changes, and I'd see no evidence that he will, you're just going to replace a bad defensive coordinator with another bad defensive coordinator, even if that guy's not necessarily bad where he's at now. And I don't know anyone in college football, that's a really good defensive coordinator, proven defensive coordinator that would want to coach with that.
It would have to be a young up and comer that might be like
Right.
a really good defensive mind. It would have to be that kind of guy, I think.
Right.
You're definitely not getting a really good like veteran defense. Like you're not getting a Phil Parker coming to USC. Like that's not the type of guy that you're going to be able to get.
Yeah. Hey, just wanted to give a quick note. Somebody had asked about Notre Dame struggled against Louisville as kind of like but that's a counterpoint. Just want to point out this, just because I know not everybody's like watching Louisville every week, right? Louisville actually right now ranks 13th in the country in scoring defense. They're actually slightly ahead of Notre Dame, and they rank 12th nationally in total defense yards allowed. Notre Dame's 7th. They're only giving up 285.2 yards per game, and they're only giving up 4.77 yards per play, which ranks them 17th. So Louisville actually has had a very good defense this year, Ryan. And you and I have talked a lot about their corners going into the game and since. So again, a very good defense. The worst defense that Notre Dame has beat up was NC State's. That's the worst defense that Notre Dame has beat up of the top defenses that we talked about. They rank 35th in college football in scoring defense. And again, part of that is because of Notre Dame. They rank 40th in college football in yards allowed per play. And then they are 32nd in total offense or total defense. So that's the other top 40 defense that they've played this season. And obviously Duke is in there. Ohio State's 5th, Clemson's 6th in total defense. I think Duke is 28th. They've fallen a little bit because of the struggles of late, but still they're only giving up 329 yards per game. So they've actually played 5 teams, Ryan, that rank 32nd or higher in total defense. Again, does not excuse how Notre Dame played at all. That's not the point. It's not to justify how Notre Dame played because Notre Dame went 2-3 against those 5 teams, Ryan, and was a 4th and 16 fail, not converting on a 4th and 16 from being 1-4 against those teams. And the defense isn't why you lost those games. My point is simply to say LSU is not that. And that's my point. Notre Dame, we've got to have a long, hard talk about how Notre Dame can start doing better against those type of teams. Long, hard talk about it. My whole point is, but let's not act like Notre Dame is just struggling all the time. And they don't even struggle against all the good defenses they've played. And I say this about Ohio State. They still moved the ball up and down the field against Ohio State. They just couldn't put points on the board. Two fourth down failures. You had a missed field goal. And, you move the ball on them, to me, in a way that shows you're capable of doing that. And Ohio State has a elite defense this season. I mean, they have been outstanding on defense this season. And so, that's where and still to this date, Ryan, Notre Dame is still the team that has the highest yards per play average against Ohio State. And it wasn't until Rutgers went for 361 this past weekend that a team topped them in total yards. Up until Rutgers went for 361, nobody had more yards against Ohio State than Notre Dame. That's not to brag. It's just to say that even within context, Notre Dame's offense still did better against them than anybody else did. That's the point. Still not good enough. That's not okay. It's not acceptable. That's not like hey, we lost, but we lost better than anybody else did. It's just context of when you see that, could Notre Dame lose to LSU in a bowl game? Of course they could. Yeah. But this notion that our offense always sucks and they couldn't move the ball on LSU and we'd get smacked by LSU. If Notre Dame lost to LSU, it'd be like 42-35, 42-38, something like that.
Also, if you're playing LSU in the bowl game at this point, is Jaden Daniels going to play? Is Malik Neighbors going to play? Is Brian Thomas Jr. going to play? Like I don't know if
Smith
going to
play. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's possible. I mean, yeah. So I think that you also need to understand that, like, because I think there's a question at some point that was asked before the mailbag started of like, what players in Notre Dame aren't going to play in the bowl game if when they get there. And I think that conversation again, if we're talking about the hypothetical between LSU, it's like some of their best players aren't going to play either, man. Like it's just the situation you're going to be in. So, by the way, Jim Knowles has been a godsend for
Oh,
Ohio
huge.
State this year. Absolutely
And
godsend
and
for them.
Ryan, you and I said this when they hired him. It's going to take a year. It's
Yep.
going to take time to why did we think that? Because that's been the case everywhere he's ever been. It takes
Yep.
time to learn that defense, but once they figured it out, it's going to be fun to watch.
He's a great defensive mind. Great defensive mind. Tom Connor. What's up, man? Thank you so much for the super chat. You don't know how hard it is to listen today. I love the talent they're bringing in, and I truly have faith that Marcus Freeman will get it done. I hope
I
you're right,
love it.
sir.
I love some
Hope you're right.
optimism. I'm still
Yep.
confident. Look, here's the thing for me, Ryan. I think Marcus Freeman has a lot of the tools needed to be a very successful coach, one that can win.
Don't disagree with
Talent
that.
acquisition is not going to be a problem, but there are certain things that he's going to have to show that he can alter his stance on. And every great coach, everyone has had at some point in time in his career, sometimes early, sometimes late, to say, I need to rethink how I'm doing this and how we're going about
Yep.
doing this. And that's where Coach Freeman is, because you always have these ideas. Well, when I run my own business, I'm going to do this. There are
Mm-hmm.
things that I believed I was going to do when I started my own business that I quickly learned, like, yeah, that's probably not going to work that way. I'm going to have to alter, change, to do things a little bit differently. And I never would have dreamed I would be doing this every single day, right? But look, things happen. You be open minded to change, and you look at what's working, what's not working, and that's same for football coach. It's same for anything. It's same, I would assume, for being a parent. Hey, when I have a kid, I'm gonna be this way, and then you realize, like, yeah, that's not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
in anything you do, if you desire to be great at it, you always have to be willing to say the results aren't what they are, and I need to look in the mirror and say, is it my philosophy? Is it my plan? Is it what I thought was going to work just not going to work? And we need to figure out what it is. I've said this before. Mac Brown is not a Hall of Fame coach if he doesn't decide around 2003 to change the offense and go from a pro style 21 personnel team to a spread running team. He's not a Hall of Famer if he doesn't do that. He doesn't have a national championship, doesn't play for another if he doesn't do that. He doesn't have Vince Young if he doesn't do that. And it took that, hey, I got to look in the mirror and say, I'm tired of getting my butt kicked by Oklahoma. What can we do to be better? And he said, this is what we need to do. And they made that change. And that's what he's going to have to, that's what Marcus Freeman's going to have to do. And I think if he can be willing to do that, I have no doubt that Marcus Freeman can win at Notre Dame at a very high level. There's no doubt.
The only thing I can promise you, Tom, is that whether it happens or not with Coach Freeman or what the next step is, Notre Dame will have a lot of talent on that roster. That's all I can promise you. They will have a lot of talent on the roster. Hopefully they're able to use it correctly. Aiden Benami, another one. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Why do people think Al Golden might leave when he left the NFL already and doesn't like to recruit all the time? So we hear he said Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman are special.
Well, those two things can still be true, and he can still have career aspirations that are beyond that. I mean, I absolutely loved working at Muhlenberg College. Loved it. Had a great deal. I love the kids. I mean, it's probably my favorite group of kids was that 2002 Muhlenberg team. Really liked living in Allentown, Ryan. You know me, I'm a small town guy. I don't really like being I've lived in big cities before. Don't like it. It's not fits. Love the head coach, but an opportunity came along that said, for my aspirations of what I want to do as a football coach, I needed to take the Duquesne job. Had zero desire to live in Pittsburgh, none. There was a lot of things, but it was like, but this is a move I need to make because this is what's going to better my career. And there are aspirations that he has now. If Al Golden decides, you know what, I want to be a college head football coach, then he'll stay at Notre Dame until that opportunity comes. But I don't know that that's necessarily his career goals. And just every source that I've ever had has said that that's kind of his plan is always to kind of get back to the NFL. And he didn't leave the NFL as a D coordinator to come to Notre Dame and be a D coordinator. He left the NFL as a position coach. Right, exactly. Linebackers coach, and then came back to Notre Dame to be a defensive coordinator, something he had not done in 20 years. Now he has that experience. Now he has on tape, he can say, look what I did at Notre Dame. Look what we did schematically. Look how we stopped the top pass offense. I mean, Al Golden has been a phenomenal pass defense defensive coordinator. Phenomenal. I mean, Clemson barely got to 100 yards this Saturday. Louisville, who's one of the top pass offenses in college football, had 145 yards. Duke or USC is an elite offense throwing the football. They didn't get to 200 yards in that game. And so you're talking about a guy, Ryan, that has shown, I mean, Drake May struggled against Notre Dame last year. Spencer Rattler struggled against Notre Dame last year. Tanner McKee struggled against Notre Dame. Jaron Hall, I think, is starting in the NFL right now, right? Isn't he as a rookie? Didn't he? He didn't start this last week. I thought the quarterback
they traded for Josh Dobbs before.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So he was a backup quarterback in the NFL as a rookie.
Yep.
And he struggled mightily against Notre Dame last year. Like, Al Golden's going to have quite the resume for a passing league to show, like, hey, look what I can do. He's gone against Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, and shut their pass games down. So, and every time we hear about NFL jobs being coming open, who are the two coaches that are in the top 3 or 4 that always get mentioned? Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley. And he was able to go shut him down. So I just think that's ultimately what his career aspirations are, is to be at that level.
And as the Cincinnati Bengals linebacker coach, he was a little bit blocked from maybe having a promotion in that because they have one of the best defensive coordinators in all of the NFL right now. I forget to lose something. I forget his last name, but he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. So
and is he? And I don't believe, isn't he a little older? So the odds of him like kind of getting that NFL head coaching job, like it doesn't seem like he's a guy that's necessarily.
They've been talking about it this past offseason. His name was mentioned. People are saying again he might get a shot this offseason, but we'll see. I mean, I have no idea if he's going to get a serious interest, I guess. But he's had some interest. I think he's had a couple interviews for NFL head coaching jobs, so we'll see. We had Zach 32. Thank you so much, Zach. How can Freeman not question his offensive philosophy after everything that has happened?
We don't know that he has or hasn't.
Right.
I mean, we're assuming things.
Zach, all we can do is hope, man. Like, I hope that Coach Freeman, and whether it happens this bye week or it happens after the season, whenever it happens, I hope when you take a step back and you say, I don't know if we can function like that all the time. I just don't know if that's I don't know if that's translatable. I don't know if that's sustainable for the college level. I just don't think it is anymore. There was a time where Coach Freeman's philosophy offensively would have worked. It would have worked really,
when he
well.
Was at Ohio State as a player. That's where it comes from.
Trestle ball, right? I mean, like, it would have worked, and it did work. Today's game, I just don't think it works. Is it possible that it's cyclical and eventually goes back that way? Sure, but as a head coach, though, you need to be evolutionary with your thought process to how you win football games. You mentioned Nick Saban. Like, Nick Saban has changed his philosophy a couple different times offensively at this point. So, yeah, you have to be able to be. I don't say experimental, but you have to be able to be evolutionary with your mindset of how you evolve.
Ryan. Evolutionary is the right way. You have to be evolutionary. Now, that doesn't mean that you just are always following the whim. Sometimes you are ahead of the curve, but it's about doing things in a way that it's like, you know what, like, this is what I think I need to do to recruit to this level. Because I think you could win with an offense like Notre Dame runs now if you have elite talent across the board. And no one has that. Like LSU 2019, maybe you could do it that way, maybe. But even that team had a couple games where they had to scrap and battle to win those football games. And if you're not running a better offense, those games the difference might be, you don't score 45 against Texas and lose. You lose. You don't score 23 against Auburn and lose, right? I mean, and now you're just Lincoln Riley. You know what I mean? So it requires such a level of eliteness and perfection that I just don't know. To your point, Ryan, if you what I meant is you can win that way is in theory you can win that way if you're, but you just, it's what's not practical is building an offense or a team that's that loaded to where you can win that way. Winning titles wise.
Right. If Alabama wins a similar brand, I know they're different as far as like the quarterback run stuff they do or whatever, but like philosophy, I think they're kind of similar in the sense of like, let's run the football, let's be ball control and that type of thing. So if Alabama wins a championship this year, that's still not a formula that I would want Notre Dame to emulate right now. It's still not one because I don't think that it's sustainable as of today, right now, with where you are as a program. I just don't think it's sustainable. I think that Notre Dame functionally in this offense that they're running can be a very good offense, be a championship level offense. I agree with you there. I think there's some stuff in the passing game that you need to get a little bit more creative with. And I think ultimately you need to change your philosophy, though. I'm not asking to change the scheme. I'm asking to change the philosophy with how you want to play football. I think that is incorrect offensively right now with where you are today. Yes, you want to be able to run the football. Yes, you want to win the time of possession battle. Sure, every offense wants to do that, but you don't do it in the slow pace, snail like manner that you are trying to play offensive football right now. I don't think you play that way anymore. Don't.
Agree.
And that's coming from a defensive guy that hates offense. But yeah, anyway. Aiden Benami, man, you are emptied the pockets today. Thank you so much, sir. Tulips in the winter, big time points where Brian, big time points there, Brian. Gotcha.
Yeah. So Angela sent me pictures earlier of the tulips. These are what they look like. So those are the ones I got her. And I got them from Books.com. I'm telling you, fellas, if you want to get on your ladies' good side and you can afford it, I have to look at what those price is. I think it's like maybe like $50 a month. But they deliver them to your house and they come like they haven't budded yet. So like they're really fresh. And then like they didn't start blooming until like day 2. So they just last a lot longer. It's not like they've been in the store for like 3 days, 4 days, already bloomed, and then your shelf life is shorter. I'm telling you guys, BOUQS.com. I mean, it's been great. Because not every wife likes flowers. Mine does. Mine really does. And so yeah, it's been a great I heard about it on a podcast that I listened to, and it was one of the sponsors, and I was like, let me check that out. So I got her, my mom, and my mother-in-law flowers. I think it was for like Mother's Day or something like that. So I used them for that, and they all arrived on time, or they package them great. Like, it's awesome. They're not a sponsor of mine. This is from husband to husband, right? I mean, that's where I'm coming from. If you're someone whose wife really likes that, it's a good resource to use.
I always love when you get a couple cool things on podcasts like that stuff. Like I want to try. I started listening to the Kelsey's podcast, and they've been talking about this energy drink that I want to try just because they keep talking about it. I remember the first time I ever heard about Built Bar was listening to a podcast as well, and then I actually found out that Built Bar is really good. So that's cool. I'm going to keep eating Built Bars.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So Ryan, right now my mouse is not like StreamYard is not letting me click. So
nice.
I'm gonna have to
let's do it. Man.
Try to figure out what's going on. It might not be a StreamYard thing. It might just be my mouse. So if you can just pull up the next one, and I'll try to figure this out.
Okay, let's do it, man. Let's do it. I think we had a super chat that actually we had a couple super chats. Let's go to this one, I guess, next. If it would pop up, that'd be great. No, we already did the Zach one. I got you.
I'm back now.
Here we go.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Oh, I clicked it off. That
was
my fault. Our Goodman with a super chat. Thank you so much. Brian and Ryan, do you believe that Marcus Freeman has the ability to look within and make changes necessary for Notre Dame to be a national contender? I have no idea. I hope so. Man, I don't know, man. The
first part we can say yes to, Ryan, as far as being able to look within and make changes. Like if you ended it there, I would say yes, because we've already seen him do that. The question, however, is, Ryan, is he willing to look at himself, recognize the problem, and then will his changes work? That we know in some areas. Like I think he did that last year defensively. I think he had a big hand in the defense. Like Notre Dame made some changes after the Stanford game defensively that made them play a lot better down the stretch. And then they went away from that against USC. Didn't work. And then they've kind of been that team all year this year. I think Marcus Freeman had a big role in that. That's his wheelhouse. And this isn't to take any credit away from Al Golden. Al Golden's done a great job. But, I mean, Marcus Freeman's the head coach. He is directing things the way that he wants it. So I think he made those changes. He made some changes about how they are going to prepare and do things last year, and it resulted in them being much better down the stretch. But will he be able to do those to a level that gets them to play championship football? That part I don't know. I'm hopeful.
I think Marcus Freeman will always adapt defensively to play championship level football. Offensively, I have no idea. I think there is functionally an issue with this offensive approach right now. Will Marcus Freeman be able to look within inside himself and say, nope, we're not doing that anymore, and adopting a different offensive philosophy? I don't know. We'll see. Defensively, though, I think we're on the same page as I think he'll figure that out. He always has. So, yeah.
The frustrating thing, Ryan, is that we see the offense do things against teams that aren't that good. where it's like, if you just would have been as aggressive against Clemson as you were against Pitt, we're having a different conversation now. If you would have been as aggressive against, Louisville as you were against Pitt or North Carolina State or Central Michigan or Tennessee State or Navy, we're having a different conversation now. That's what frustrates me. It's you get into these big games, you get these big moments, and you just kind of pucker up a little bit, and that's my frustration. And you can say, well, it's a Jared Parker thing. Maybe it is. I don't know. All I know is it was also an issue last year when Jared Parker was just the tight ends coach. That's the reality. And so, we're gonna have to find out. I'll just like you, Neil. Now I'm hopeful that's where it's out.
We had another super chat from Let MGR1. Thank you so much for the
Let
super
Manager
chat.
One.
Let Manager One.
I think it's because I didn't know what it was at first either, and he had at one point in time reached out and said that to me.
And the question is, can you break down, and thank you for the super chat, by the way, can you break down how a quarterback's cadence works?
Well, it depends. I mean, everybody has a different cadence. Some teams don't have any cadence. I don't think USC uses any kind of cadence. Aren't they just all clapped?
Just a clap?
Yeah. Most teams just do a clap now. Yeah.
They change from, structurally speaking, the ones that you'll hear most common, like in the NFL, this is all you're going to hear is down. And then you'll hear a color, and then black 10, say it, hut. That'll be kind of what your cadence is on that. College base,
that's what I grew up on.
College base, I've heard more, and I think this is more like a kind of a spread thing, is that they'll just say down, say it, hut, and then they'll go on whatever hut they want to go on. But now, like you said, there's a lot of teams that are just clap or silent count type of teams. Right. So it really does depend on what your philosophy is and just how you work it.
And those colors and numbers, and then if you're someone who adds other stuff, you have to have other dummy calls. Like you may say, black 10 Ranger, set hut. Those things all mean something, or could mean something. You have dummy calls, which is just, hey, this is just part of our cadence. But then there's certain things that are trigger words, right? Like so, if we use any color that starts with an R, or I don't know, like something like that, or let's say a B, right? So you're usually like red 10. What was it? What was Peyton Manning's thing?
Black 10.
What was his?
Black 10. Wasn't he a Black 10 guy? Black 10.
I don't know. I can't remember. John Elway was like red 88. Red 88. That was John Elway's. Okay, that's fine. And then you'll say green, whatever. But then there's like a color that's like, okay, this means something. So then you say, green, 35, green 35. You just audible to 35 or whatever that 35. So like when I was a kid in high school, it'd be like, okay, we just check to, mid zone to the left, that kind of thing. And we'd have dummy words that like we would use like cities. They would signify if we check like red 55, Houston, we're sliding our protection at the left and we're running all hitches. Yep. Right. But you can't really do that anymore in college because number one, they're not going to hear you outside. You're not going to hear the cadence anymore. No. And so that's why everything has gone to signals and things like that, because the cadence was less effective for a lot of reasons, and so it's just easier to have everybody look over and have it signaled in and everybody kind of rocking and rolling. It's kind of how it goes.
I remember Peyton was notorious for just yelling Omaha all the time. But for people that I remember he talked about it afterwards, and that just always meant that it's on one. It's on one. That's what Omaha means. So that actually wasn't a part of his cadence though. He would just be like Omaha, say hut, and then it would just be on one hut. So got the quarterback
good questions.
Going. Let Manager. Thank you so much.
Good
Logan Trailer with a super chat. Better days are coming for this team. Changes need to be made, obviously, but the future is bright. Thank you guys for all you do. Go Irish. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
I mean, a week ago I said I believe Notre Dame's going to win a title in the next 5 years. If the Clemson game causes me to rethink that, then I'm an emotional simpleton that you should not be listening to. Right. Your opinion like that needs to be changed over a period of either one dramatic event, and that game was not a dramatic event, or over a period of time, it's proven that this coach just doesn't have it. And he's still learning and evolving as a coach. I wish it would have happened a little quicker. I'm not excusing it or justifying it, because I think there was ample evidence last year that you needed to make those changes. But it's hard to make wholesale changes in the middle of the season, folks. It is. Sometimes like, look, this is who we are. We just got to make the most of who we are. So like Ryan and I are going to do a show tomorrow. And one of the conversations is going to be about what does Notre Dame need to do to kind of head into the offseason to make us feel better about where this team is trending. One of the suggestions will not be a wholesale offensive change where they do this, and this, and they don't do any of those things right now. That's not practical. That would actually be worse than just keep doing what you're doing because they wouldn't be able to execute at a high level. It'll be more practical. What can you do within who you are right now to be better? Then the offseason becomes, okay, now what big picture changes do we need to make? You just, it's just like that's just the reality of it. And, but yes, I'm so confident in it because the one thing I know is the talent acquisition is going to continue to be good. And some of these games, Notre Dame has lost. If you're a little better at quarterback, you're a little better at receiver, you're a little better at linebacker, D-line, whatever, the talent's better, that could be enough to beat Ohio State. If Notre Dame's better at safety, just God-given ability. Maybe guys with more God-given ability. Maybe Bronte Johnson makes that play that TJ Brown doesn't. Maybe he makes the play. Maybe Ivan Taylor makes the play that Ramon Henderson doesn't. I don't know if they're able to get like an Ivan Taylor kind of guy. I don't know the answers to that, but I'm always more confident when your talent's even better. And there are certainly areas where I expect the talent to be a lot better, including receiver, where even the freshmen that are currently here are now sophomores and juniors and seniors. They'll be better as long as the coaching is good enough.
And they don't have an hamstring injury. Michael S. with the super chat. Thank you so much. Expectation next 2 years should be 8 to 9 wins. Head coach needs to focus on restructuring offense and develop his own quarterbacks for the long haul. Patience needed.
I'm not willing to say the expectations for next year's an 8 wins. I'm sorry.
If I'm expecting the team to go 8-4, 9-3 each of the next 2 years, that means that this is a stagnant and underwhelming program, and I am not ready to go.
It also means Marcus Freeman's not the guy.
Yeah.
Now listen, I know the schedule's been tougher under Freeman, but this is still a program that had won 10 or more games for what, 5 straight years, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20, 5 straight years. Including a year in 2017 where you played a schedule every bit as hard as the one you played this year, if not harder, in my opinion, Ryan. So I'm sorry. I can't go there. I can't. Yeah. I mean, patience, sure. I mean, I understand patience to a degree, but Marcus Freeman didn't walk into a situation where he inherited a crap football team. Is the roster where it needed to be? No, because what's something you and I always complain about? Brian Kelly's not doing a good enough job recruiting. There are deficiencies on there, but they're not, you should be 7-3 right now deficiencies, in my opinion.
Right.
Your roster's still better than Louisville's. I'm sorry. No one will convince me otherwise. I think your roster's better than Clemson's. You could argue that Clemson has a good matchup in certain areas. Okay, fair. But when you consider that Clemson had 8 starters out, I'm sorry, you can't convince me they beat Notre Dame because they had a better roster. They were prepared better. They played better. And but the better your talent, the wider the margin for error. That's also true. So, Ryan, no, I'm not. We're not doing that. We're no.
At some points, the patience thing too is just a delaying of the inevitable too.
It's a lower,
like, no.
Yep.
No,
and it's a lowering of the standard. That's what it is.
I agree. We had a question from Cole Barker. What's up, Cole? Does Jared Parker retain the offensive coordinator spot? Have you heard any rumors that Coach Freeman has recognized the offensive scheme issues?
Guys, number one, we don't comment. Cole, I know you know this. We don't comment on stuff like that. It's not my place. I don't know. If I had heard that he wasn't going to be back, that's reporting. That's news. But does he retain the spot? I don't know. Let's see how the last 2 games go. Let's see what Marcus Freeman decides. I have no idea. I would assume so. But other than that, I don't have a lot to say about that. Has Coach Freeman, guys, do you think Jared Parker, like, forget Coach Freeman recognizing it, do you think Jared Parker watched the game on Saturday and was like, I called a pretty dang good game. We're pretty flipping good. We just got to go recruit better players. I know he doesn't think that.
Was that your Kentucky accent, by the way? That was pretty good, man. Pretty good. Was that your Kentucky accent?
No. So but no, I'm 100% confident that neither Marcus Freeman nor Jared Parker are happy with what happened on Saturday. That neither of them think we prepared him perfectly, we called it perfectly, our guys just didn't execute. No, I promise you they don't think that. I promise you there's calls that Jared Parker's going to look back in that game and say, what the heck was I thinking? And he didn't get to where he is right now if he didn't. Now, does that mean he's going to be the guy down the road to lead Notre Dame to greatness? I have no idea. I don't have any evidence to support that he will be that guy right now. I mean, you are what you are. But I know that for a fact that they're not happy with how the offense has gone. Now, do they feel that it's a scheme problem, a philosophy problem, a preparation problem? That I don't know. Because sometimes, Ryan, your playbook's fine. You're not necessarily implementing things appropriately, but it's more about our preparation to get our guys to perform at a high level on Saturdays is not good. And so if we can affect that, if we can change that. So like, I'll say this again, if Notre Dame simply took the stuff that was there on Clemson, you don't change a single thing play calling wise, not a single thing, and they just execute the plays that were there, I still think they win on Saturday. I do. And that includes not throwing a pick six, not muffing a punt, right? Like that's what I'm referring to, Ryan. They still win on Saturday. If Sam Hartman makes the right read and empty and doesn't throw to a play where everybody in the stadium knew that Jeremiah Trotter had jumped that route, if he throws the wide fade to Tyree or the slant to Jane Greathouse, if he hits Tobias on the go route, if he hits Rico early on the crossing route, I mean, all that type of stuff. If C. Carroll doesn't get driven into the running back on 2nd and 2, and so instead of going 3 and out, you've got a first down, right? If you just execute better. Now, is that saying the players didn't do a good job? No. What I'm saying is you need to figure out as a coach why, when you get against good defenses, your execution plummets compared to when you're playing bad teams. You've got to address that. And so to me, that's foundation number one, because you can change the scheme, Ryan, and do all the things we want them to do. Go tempo, do all this. But if your preparation is still flawed, it won't matter when you play the best teams on your schedule. So to me, that's number one. Then you can figure out the philosophy and the scheme and all that kind of stuff. That comes second. You need to figure out what is happening. Where's the disconnect between us and our players when we play anybody with a pulse on defense? Why are we such Jekyll and Hyde where we can score 106 points 2 weeks in a row combined and then can barely get across midfield against Clemson? Now, Clemson's very good, but they're not that good, especially with all the guys they were missing. So that's the first thing, Ryan, to me that needs to get addressed. Is not what are we doing schematically? What are we doing? I say you could make a case that the overall philosophy needs to be the first thing that's looked at, because then that could impact your preparation. That's fair. Sure. But scheme is at best the third or fourth thing that we're talking about. There's other things that need to get figured out first before you start having too many conversations about scheme.
Yep. You build scheme around your philosophy is kind of how I would phrase it. And I have my questions about the philosophy in general, and whether Coach Freeman and his staff can recognize that and change that. I have no idea. I'll say this. I'm hopeful that he will, because Marcus Freeman's a young guy, and I think he's a very astute person. I think he's a very smart. I think that he will be able to look inside himself and figure that stuff out. I do. But I will say this, and I don't like reading into press conference stuff too often, but hearing him talk about muff punts and interceptions, I'm like, man, it's not really the overall issue, is it? Is it really? Is that the number one issue on the offense right now? I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. Hopeful, but not optimistic.
Here's my point, Ryan, that I said earlier. If they just would have executed the stuff was there, they win the game on Saturday. I believe that. Right. That means not throwing a pick six and the muff punt, stuff like that. But you and I have always been process over results guys. That still wouldn't have changed the issues that I did have with the game plan on Saturday and the play calling on Saturday, right? So just beating a beat up 4-4 Clemson team doesn't mean, hey, we figured it all out, right? That's the whole point. The issues would still exist. Hey, why did you struggle running the football so much in the second half? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Yeah, you were able to go out and get a W against a beat up, struggling team, but those problems still exist. My point is simply, there is something that's leading to you not performing to the best of your ability, even within the calls that are being made, that needs to be addressed first. And I think we're on the same page on that. It sounds like
you need to make sure that your approach and your process is, and you guys hear me say this word all the time, needs to be sustainable, right? It needs to be against the worst team on your schedule against the best team on your schedule. You need to be able to have success within the scheme that you are running, the philosophy that you have, and the approach that you have. And I don't think that is sustainable right now because we have seen it. Why is everyone mad right now? Because against the best defenses that Notre Dame has seen this year, they have struggled immensely.
4 out of 5 times.
Which
And you can
tells
even
you,
Ryan, you can even argue 5 out of 5 times because I still say the offense we saw pre 2-hour rain delay looked a lot like what we saw in the other 4 games.
sure.
Would you agree with that? Like,
I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I just think that there needs to be a conversation over, look, this offensive approach, this philosophy might work against the worst teams on our schedule, but if it doesn't work against the best teams, is it really the best one for us? Is that really what our bread and butter should be? Needs to be a conversation this offseason, obviously. So,
and Ryan, that's exactly what our beef was with Brian Kelly. I don't care that he beats all the teams he's supposed to. They don't play in the big games well. Now, Marcus Freeman has shown a little bit more of an ability at times to get his team up for playing those moments. I mean, they did smack Clemson last year, right? Like they did beat USC in a spotlight game where you could say, hey, USC wasn't as good as we thought they were going to be, but the moment was huge, and they answered the bell. That's the thing where Brian Kelly's team didn't even answer the bell.
No,
but that's all fine and dandy, but you're still not winning enough of those games, right? That's just kind of, sure, it's a little better in that regard. But yeah,
well, that's why I always hate because the naysayers. Oh, and this is quieted now that LSU also lost this weekend. But everyone, oh man, maybe Brian Kelly wasn't so bad. Maybe that wasn't so bad. And I'm like, guys, no, it was. It was because you knew that you were going to be this level, but you also knew that you couldn't get to this level. Like it was still not where you wanted to go. So who cares if you were more consistent, quote unquote, against the bad teams against Brian Kelly? Either way, you're not winning a championship. Either way, you're not winning a championship. So who cares?
There's no evidence in Brian Kelly's tenure that he would have beat Ohio State. There's no evidence that they would have beat Louisville. There's no evidence they would have beat Duke. There just isn't.
It's the same conversation that someone asked on the post-game show about Tommy Rees before I had to leave. It's like, guys, why am I comparing Tommy Rees to Jared Parker? For one, because neither of them at this point has shown that they could take it to that level. So who cares? Who cares? It's not like you had a young up-and-coming phenomenal offensive mind that you just let leave for no reason. Like you just left, took a big job, whatever, and you didn't promote with him, whatever conversation. Tommy Rees was an underwhelming offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. He's now gone to Alabama and has been so far a pretty underwhelming offensive coordinator at Alabama for the most parts. We'll see if he gets better. But why am I comparing whether it would be better with Tommy Rees or Jared Parker? Right now, it wouldn't be good enough in either regard. So why am I having that conversation? I just don't understand why I'm having that conversation. It's just weird to me. It's weird. Sorry, that one gets me a little fired up. Man.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Going back to what we already knew wasn't good enough is not the answer.
Right.
It's
figuring.
Right.
I was talking to my wife about this, Brian. I was like, hey, Kate, you remember that last boyfriend you had before me that you hated, right? Like you weren't a big fan of him. That would be like me going back in time and being like, hey, who's worse? This bad boyfriend that you hate or the last bad boyfriend you hated? Like, who cares? They're still suck.
Exactly. Find a guy that's not that way. Exactly. Exactly.
Right. Oh, man. Nathan Mel, what's up, Nathan? Nathan, I forgot to text you back, by the way. I'm sorry. I just realized that as your message came up here. Advantages, disadvantages of a pro-style offense.
Well, I'll say one disadvantage to me is a pro-style offense more than the others requires a greater level of player competence, in my opinion. It requires more precision. It requires more, everyone's got to be on the same page. It requires more, you've got to really scheme your way into success in those type of things. You've got to really make sure, you do that, but you also demand a high level of excellence. I also think it puts even greater emphasis on the need to have a big time quarterback. I think when you look at David Shaw's tenure at Stanford, their best teams usually had NFL style quarterbacks. I mean, to some degree, Kevin Hogan is not Andrew Luck, but he's still a guy that spent several years in the NFL. And when he didn't have that kind of quarterback, their offense looked a lot different and was far less effective, and their team was far less effective. And so I just think it demands a higher level of precision and a higher level of talent. The advantages are, to me, look, if you are a team like Notre Dame and you can recruit offensive line and tight end and running back the way that Notre Dame can, it gives you a chance to execute that at a high level, because it's kind of like this. In order to run some of these spread offenses and things like that, you need elite receivers. Like LSU would still be really good on offense if they didn't have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and those type of guys, but they wouldn't be in Jaden Daniels, but they wouldn't be an elite offense. The eliteness requires those athletes. And to me, a pro style offense is similar in that it demands elite players on the offense. It demands an elite offensive line, talent at running back, tight end. Notre Dame can recruit that at a high level if you're doing things right. So in that regard, I think Notre Dame can recruit well to a pro style offense. I think pro style offenses are good. They allow you to be a more physical football team, in my opinion. They allow you to do a lot more things from a movement and motion standpoint. They allow you to do more things from a leverage standpoint, in my opinion. So those are pros to me. Pros to being in a pro style offense. Didn't mean to use that pun, but that's where I'm at. So those would be some advantages. Disadvantages, it's a little harder to push the tempo in a pro style offense, in my opinion. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's a little harder if a team is kind of coming out and they match up well with you schematically, or talent wise. It can be a little harder to scheme yourself open the way it can be in some other schemes. So those are some pros and cons for me. All right. Got a super chat from John Peters. Says, I noticed Sam Hartman went through the progressions and looked at all the options when passing in the beginning of the season. Now he has tunnel vision. I would say that's accurate. I don't think he's progressing through reads as well as he was early in the season, Ryan. I really don't. But I think the answer is easy. I think it's confidence. He doesn't have confidence in himself. I don't think right now he doesn't have confidence in the guys around him, the offensive line, the receivers. And so when you get into a situation like that, Ryan, you start zeroing in on that's just the human nature for quarterbacks. When you don't have confidence in what's around you, you're looking to you're going to lock in on things a little bit more. And there has to be something in the disconnect, Ryan, or in the preparation that's creating this as well. That, like, no one's talking about the job Gino Guidugli's doing. Like, I'm even hearing people saying he should be promoted to OC. And I'm like, did you watch the Cincinnati offense last year? And I'm like, what about and I'm not blaming this on Gino Guidugli. I don't know if he's the problem or not. But what I'm saying is what evidence do you have right now that Gino Guidugli would be a better answer for Notre Dame as an offensive coordinator than Jared Parker? Right. What evidence do you have of that? The quarterback's not playing lights out right now. He's progressively got worse. And I think he went like 7 games in a row last year where they failed to get to 30 points at Cincinnati last season. So, no.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I think everybody on offense whose name is not Dylan McCullough needs to be able to look in the mirror and be like, dude, I didn't do a good enough job. Right? Sure. And if Dylan McCullough is who I think he is, he's still going to look in the mirror and do that. But he doesn't need to the way that others do. You know what I mean? Like every competitor, Ryan, looks in the mirror and says, hey, how can I do better? You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is, like, I'm telling you as your head coach, you need to look in the mirror and figure some stuff out, right? There's a difference. I'm not having that. I'm with Dean. Like, hey, man, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. Right? Keep it up.
I think that as a collective, and this is kind of in my thought process about the whole thing, I even wrote a little something about it earlier. I think that we should be able to understand that does Sam Hartman need a lot of blame? Yes. Yes, he does. But am I to be led to believe that a player that threw 110 career touchdown passes before this year, a player that threw nearly 80 touchdown passes the last 2 seasons, a guy that was an all ACC caliber signal caller and had thrown 6 touchdowns last year in a nearly flawless game against Clemson, am I to believe that he is the full problem with the Notre Dame offense right now? Am I to believe that? I don't think that is realistic. I think that we need to use our common sense on that one. There is a support issue around Sam Hartman as well right now. And that might be lack of trust in players. That might be lack of trust in protection. That might be lack of trust in play calling. It could be a lot of those different things.
Poor preparation,
interwoven
poor
together.
coaching. Right. Yes, exactly.
Why in the worst? Why in the big moments was he just honing in on nothing but Mitchell Evans before he got hurt? Because that was the only guy that he really trusted. It seems right. Like there is a lack of trust. I think all around right now, which is it's an issue. Obviously, it's a big issue. So hopefully Notre Dame's able to figure that out in the offseason. But we shall see.
Agree. We got some more super chats, Ryan, but I want to get to some of these early questions that we had as well. And we'll get back to the super chats, but I don't want this to turn into a super chats only show. We appreciate those, but I know there were some people who got in here really early and had some questions. So I want to get to those as well.
I got in at like 12:20 today and just started storing questions because people were wild in here, man. Tim B, what's up, man? What personnel changes would you make if you were Coach Marcus Freeman? Has Sam Hartman played poorly enough to be benched? Should we be fielding younger players for the good of the program moving forward?
Ryan, for me, I'm not ready to do the whole bench Sam Hartman thing. He needs to play better. I'm definitely not doing that before the Wake Forest game. I look. The only way that I would bench Sam Hartman is if his attitude and work ethic are bad, and he's not coachable.
You've never heard of that.
Yeah, before, I don't know that. So, yes, exactly. So then sure. Would I have a plan to play, maybe Steve Angeli or Kenny Minchie in the game? Sure. To me, like at receiver, I mean, okay, I'm okay giving Braylon James a shot. Right? Can't be worse than, what you threw out there on Saturday. I think it's more about you've got to have more confidence in the guys you are throwing out there as a quarterback. Yeah. And you need to rethink about who am I using and how often and those type of things. Like on offense, there's no magic bullet player that they're currently not using that they need to use, and it fixes everything. It's more about, okay, use Jeremiah Love more and differently. Right. Use Jadarian Price more and differently. Use Tobias Merriweather differently. Use Jaden Greathouse differently. Use Rico Flores differently, right? Because Rico has a really good knack for finding openings on overs and crosses and things like that. He just can't win on vertical routes. And when I mean vertical routes, I mean anything vertically oriented, comebacks, ends, all that kind of. He's just not able to win on those right now. His time will come on that. It will get stronger and all that type of stuff and feel better in the offense and all those things will come. But like right now, that's just not where he is. So you've got to figure some stuff out to allow him to be more effective because you have to play somebody outside. I mean, right now, all your best players, even Tobias Merriweather, where have his big plays come from this year? Almost exclusively, except for the one pass against Central Michigan, they've all come from him being lined up in the slot. We can't put 9 guys in the slot. You got to have somebody play outside. So they've got to find some answers on who they're using, not so much on who they're using, but how they're using guys and the volume in which they're using guys. And that would be the changes that I would make. It's not so much about personnel changes, Ryan, from a personnel in, personnel out. It's how are you using the personnel? I do think there is one position where the play has been poor enough, long enough, and you have enough options. You have options to consider change, and that's guard. And that's the guard play. This just isn't it, right? Well, Billy Strauss not ready. Okay. Then you're a coach. You get paid a lot of money. Coach them up. Give them a shot. You know what I mean? Even if, again, it's not always bench Pat Coogan. It's like, okay, what you did against Louisville, start doing now, but let the players know you're going to do it and practice it and have a plan like Heastan did in 2017, whether it's every other series, every third series, whatever. But right now, what you're seeing on Saturday at guards is not good enough. And I don't see like all of a sudden Pat Coogan becoming this great mauler. I mean, I think he'll get a little stronger and older, but he is what he is. He's not very athletic. He's not super powerful. He's tough as heck. He tries hard, and he knows the system. Okay, great, but that's limiting. There are other guys who have better talent that you need to coach up because you're 7-3 right now. Like that's a position where I would look at that and say, hey, it's time to figure some stuff out there. But at the skill positions, I don't have a problem with who they're using. I have a problem with how they're using certain guys. That's what I think needs to be more addressed.
Maybe volume as well, at least at like running back. It's like, Aldrich's awesome, but like, can we see a little bit more Jeremiah Love and use him a little bit differently? Like that would be nice, right? Like that'd be really
even
nice.
Together.
I would love it.
Even together, even together, Ryan, where if Aldrich's really gone and you're doing some stuff with RPOs where they got to make a decision. Do you want to, you guys want to collapse the box and take Aldrich on the runs, or do you want to defend the perimeter swing that we're running with an RPO to Jeremiah Love? You put him out and outside and run some stuff with now screens out of 21. It looks just like 11 personnel. Like
even split even split back, running some like outside zone look with Aldrich lead blocking now to the outside as a stretch.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, I'm
Yeah.
there. I'm there on that type of stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, there's got to be a little bit of a wrinkle because Jeremiah Love is probably your most dynamic player on offense. I mean, he probably is. He's shown it to be. I mean,
When you combine speed and elusiveness, I don't think it's debatable. Like, I think Jadarian Price and Chris Tyree, just from a pure speed standpoint, are both more explosive just on a pure speed standpoint. But what Jeremiah brings to the table, and I think Jadarian will eventually get back there as he gets further away from the Achilles, but we're dealing with where we are right now. The combination of elusiveness and explosiveness is better for him than it is anyone else. I mean, a perfect example is that gap scheme play he ran into the boundary on Saturday. That should have been a -2. But he just made it do. He outran the defense to the outside, and then made a sick cut, and ends up gaining like 6 or 7 yards on a play that at best maybe should have got back to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
Love Chris Tyree. He doesn't make that play. Love Jadarian Price. He can make that play, but not quite as consistently as Jadarian's more of a natural back. Where Jeremiah Love is kind of guy you just do. He's a jack of all trades. Use it. Use it
man.
On more than just slides and wheels. Because, hey, guess what, guys? The defense knows you're going to run them on slides and wheels. Like I asked this, Ryan, remember how great Notre Dame was on those route? I haven't seen that. Where's that at? I mean, you hit that multiple times last year. The way that Clemson was playing that slide, man, he might have scored if they would have called that route on against certain looks.
How about a variation of screens to Jeremiah Love as well? Like I've seen some swing screen stuff to him, but like how about a traditional halfback screen? How about you sneak him inside on like almost a little like inside type of look, like a little bit of a middle screen? Like I would love to see him in a lot of different areas. We also saw him on a jet sweep this year, Brian, where I was like, all right, cool, up there, man. Like we see him on a jet sweep. Like I would love to see that type of stuff. So he's one player. Now that Eli Raridan's snaps are also pumping up a little bit with the injuries there, can I throw a ball to Eli Raridan at some point, man? Like I keep hearing about how great of an athlete he is, but like they just no targets in the passing game is all. So get some of your younger, more dynamic players opportunities is kind of where I'm looking at, right? The wide receiver snap share right now, I think is very indicative of the philosophy flaws that we've talked about, right? They want to be grinders. They want to just, be consistent and just, make the easy plays and just keep the chains moving. I'm just like, nah, man, I want to create some big plays. I want some explosives, brother. Like I want to see a little bit of creativity. Like, can we get some creativity in this building? So hopefully that happens. But yeah, I mean, Sam Hartman, though, back to the original question, Tim, I would not bench him against Wake Forest. I know some people are like, I don't care, whatever. I'm like, I care because that's a really bad look against his former team. Like, that's a bad look, in my opinion. You don't have to fully commit and say he's playing every single snap. Like we can talk about a little bit of a rotation at quarterback, sure, but like I am not benching him against Wake Forest on homecoming. Like I'm all right, man. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Agree.
Tony Stangle with the question. At this point, the offense is what it is, broken and lost. Brian, what do you do as an offensive coordinator to try and fix the offense this late in the season? Is there anything you can do? Hey, man, we're talking about this tomorrow, Tony. So make sure that you're subscribed to the channel.
Tony, there's certainly things you can do. And the biggest one, and I'll just be very brief, and Ryan and I'll get into more details tomorrow, is it's a little bit of a preview. And Ryan, you and I were kind of just talking about it. Really figure out who are your playmakers and start doing more and more to make sure you're getting them the football. Really designing ways to say, hey, we're going to get Jeremiah Love the football this way. We're going to get Jadarian Price the football this way. And maybe it's when Audrich's in the game, it's just Audrich. But then when you rotate, you bring Jadarian and Jeremiah in together. And there's things, there's a lot of things you can do. But it's about who are our playmakers and how do we figure out ways to get them the football. And so we'll kind of dive into that. But it's about, hey, what the bye week can be spent doing, Ryan, is what is different about when we play these good teams besides just they're good, because it's not that simple. Well, yeah, of course the good teams. No, you aren't the same team. You don't attack the same way. You don't play with the same urgency. You don't play with the same confidence. There's something beyond just, the good teams stop you that is causing you to not play as well. You need to figure out what that is, because that can be addressed right now, Ryan. And that can be looked at and say, okay, well, we did this against Pitt. We did this against these teams and it worked. Well, why didn't we do it against other teams? Well, they got better corners. Oh, yeah, but I could point to 3 or 4 plays where your guys were winning on the outside and you didn't throw the football when you should have thrown the football. So maybe
Right.
if you throw a deep ball to Tobias, if he catches it, and you don't know if he did because he didn't get the ball. But if he catches it, it's a 40-yard gain or a 35-yard gain instead of a 75-yard touchdown. I'll still take that, And so those are things you can do, and we'll dive into those more specifically in tomorrow's show.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Irish blooded. How many more players do you think sit out now that is most likely won't be a New Year's Six Bowl? And who would you suggest does versus doesn't that leaves the team after this year?
Nobody's sitting out the next 2 games, and that's just not even a conversation that we're going to have.
Yeah.
So
I think sitting out the
yeah.
bowl game is more of a realistic
Yeah.
conversation. Irish
Yeah,
blooded.
and we'll have that when we figure out who they're going to play, because I have a feeling some guys that may sit out, just in theory, right now, might not if they're playing LSU. That's just a reality. So we'll have that chance. They'll have a month before the bowl game happens, and we'll have a chance to talk about that. But right now, nobody's sitting out, and yeah, nobody's sitting out.
Tony Stangle with another question. Could the major problems on offense be due to multiple new coaches and guys just getting adjusted to them, similar to the defense last year? Do you have any optimism this gets better next year?
Well, sure. I mean, there's always optimism. I'm a pretty optimistic person. I think that we've seen enough of the here's why I'm optimistic, right? The flashes have been there. It's stop being this way against bad teams, but then not being this way. Because, like, again, if they were kind of the same team from week to week, Ryan, and it just wasn't as effective against the bad defenses or the good defenses, I'd say, yeah, you need to make some changes or, personnel, whatever. But, like, you just look like a completely different team when you play good defenses. That's the problem. And so if you can fix that helps. But I don't hold the multiple new coaches thing, guys. That's college football. I mean, that's college football. You got beat by a Louisville team that literally has an entirely brand new coaching staff. So that excuse doesn't fly. Dylan McCullough's in year 2, Jared Parker's in year 2, Chancey Stuckey's in year 2. Those excuses don't fly. You can maybe say it with like Marty Biaggi or something like that, but and it definitely doesn't fly when your same things are happening in week 10. Right, because last year Al Golden's defense was better in the second half of the year than was the first half of the year. We saw growth from that defense. We're not seeing that from the offense. It's the same story that it was early. When you play a team that's not good on defense, you rip them up. When you play a team that's good on defense, you struggle. That's been true from the beginning of the season till now. And so I don't think – I understand, Tony, you're looking for answers. I'm with you, buddy. I get it. I just don't think I think it's a mentality thing, Ryan. I do. And I think that mentality thing bleeds into the preparation. I think when players see a more conservative game plan, I would not be shocked at all if the coaches are a little bit more ramped up and tight during those big games offensively. I won't be shocked if because that's how they play. They play like the coaches just kind of had a really, God, we got to be perfect. We can't make mistakes this week. We can't do this. We're really worried about this guy. And then the players are going to play that way. Whereas, like, Lou Holtz always was like, look, when we're playing, those kids already know what's at stake, right? So we're just, let's go out there and execute. And, so there's those things like that need to be addressed and fixed, in my opinion. And if they are, look, I don't think Jared Parker's a dumb guy. It's the same thing I said about Tom Reese. I think Jared Parker's a very smart football coach. I think Tom Reese is a very smart football coach. Neither of them right now have shown themselves to be championship caliber coordinators. Sure. And being a smart football guy, Ryan, as you know, does not make you a good coach. And being a good position coach doesn't make you a good coordinator. Being a good coordinator doesn't mean you're going to be a head coach. There's been guys that have been good coordinators that became great head coaches, and guys that were great coordinators became bad head coaches. Right? Dabo Swinney was never a coordinator. Urban Meyer was never a coordinator, and they became great head coaches, champion head coaches. So, it just, you got to hope that they can figure it out and find answers. And this is Jared Parker's first year as an offensive coordinator. I get all that. So that's why I guess I'm a little bit more giving him a little more leeway as far as, like, I'm not really thinking about firing him right now. It's not, I mean, it's overall not my go-to, Ryan, but it's also kind of like, let's keep building this. Let's try to get some continuity. Let's fix the problems that are there, and instead of just firing people and then hoping that the new staff won't have the same problem. Because at the end of the day, when Marcus Freeman, if Marcus Freeman's willing to change his strategy, then Let's see if how this new staff thrives or doesn't within that new philosophy or that adjusted philosophy. If he doesn't change his philosophy, it doesn't matter who the new head coach or new offense coordinator is going to be, because we're still going to see the similar things, because that's what the head coach wants in those moments. And that's where I'm at. So
yeah, I just feel like you saw a lot more flashes under Al Golden in year 1 than year 2, right? So like I just kind of like.
Can I interrupt
Man.
and say something? Here was something else was different. Al Golden's defenses last year tended to be at their best against the best teams they played. He had the opposite problem. They were sloppy against UNLV, right? They were sloppy against Navy. They were, like early on, they were sloppy against, Cal. They were lights out against Ohio State, right? Like lights out against Clemson. Like they were really good in those big game moments, with one exception, USC. But we've talked about that. Shorthanded, went away from what you were doing. And Al Golden's tenure at Notre Dame, the big games are when you kind of expect him to be at his best.
Yes,
and that has been the exact opposite in the offense this year. So that is a good point, right?
Yeah. I mean, Tony, like you ask about optimism. I mean, full transparency, like I'm not that optimistic about the offensive staff right now. Like I'm not. I hope to be proven wrong is where I am offensively right now. With Al Golden, I mean, I talked about it in the offseason a ton. I was like, yeah, there's some things that need to get improved, but like I think it is going to improve though, right? Like I did think it was going to get better in year 2 under Al Golden, because I saw a lot of positives there. And you're talking about also a coach that, although he hadn't been a defensive coordinator in like 20 years, right about, Al Golden is still a very tenured football coach, right? Like he's been around the block a few times. So I thought that he was going to figure it out. Maybe not even to this degree, but I thought it was going to get better. I don't know. I don't feel as optimistic about the offense improving from year 1 to year 2 under Jared Parker. There's no shot against Jared Parker. It's just different situation that we're in right now. So
yeah, I think that's fair. Brandon said that maybe I'm remembering that no one was high on Louisville's defense before they played Notre Dame. I would encourage you to go back and listen to the shows we did about Louisville that week, because we certainly gave a lot of praise. Ryan, we talked about their linebacker. I mean, not their linebackers. We talked about their defensive line wasn't super great production, but had some good athletes. We talked about how good their cornerback tandem was. So Louisville's defense is better than I thought it was going to be. I mean, they've really played good defenses of late, and they've caught some breaks too. I mean, they played Duke with a banged up Riley Leonard, and NC State's just, not a great offensive football team. At the time they were having some issues, but they're still a very good defensive football team, and we talked about that at the time. Notre Dame should have played better against them, but we that was discussed at the time.
We had a question from ND Estimate Trucking LLC. Just saw a statistic that wasn't surprising to me, as I was never a fan of Kenny Pickett. CJ Stroud has more career touchdown passes than Kenny Pickett thus far. Thoughts? I mean, my thoughts are, I mean, I could just go back to my evaluation on him, ND Estimate Trucking LLC. I had a early first round grade on CJ Stroud. I had a late third round grade on Kenny Pickett. That's it. I mean, I thought CJ Stroud was going to be a plus starting quarterback in the NFL, which he already is, only 9 games into his NFL career. I thought Kenny Pickett was going to be a very good backup that could potentially develop into a solid bridge or spot starter. That's what I thought Kenny Pickett was. So I'm not surprised that he is having more success than Kenny Pickett so far.
Can I ask you a question, Ryan? And again, This is not knowing an answer. When you evaluate a guy as a third round pick, what does that mean as far as like, is it that like a third round guy is you're going to be back up early and then eventually you can grow into a starter? Is that what the third round pick? Okay.
Yeah. I have a grading scale that basically has anything from like my thing is kind of sequenced as far as a late third, early third, and then the first round is actually broken up into 3 different tiers. But a late third round on my grade is a guy that is a plus backup early on in his career, and then by year 3 he has developmental potential into potentially being a starter. So that's kind of how I saw Kenny Pickett, of like, if he's developed, because I was not a Kenny Pickett guy at Pitt at all, and then I thought he played really well his last year, and I thought he showed a lot of signs, but I still had question marks on him. I still think that he struggled to consistently control the football. I really did actually have big concerns about the small hands, which actually ends up to be pretty practical now that we look back at it. So I mean, I wasn't that high on Kenny. I liked Kenny, but I think that he was buoyed a part of a really bad quarterback class that year. And CJ Stroud was a part of two really good quarterbacks at the top. And no surprise, he's playing a lot better than Kenny Pickett. Also, I will say this, though, in slight defense of Kenny Pickett, I don't think many quarterbacks would be super good with Matt Canada as their offensive coordinator, but still, I wasn't a big fan of Kenny Pickett coming out. Wasn't huge.
I always get nervous about those 1-year wonders, Ryan. And in Kenny Pickett's case, it wasn't like Mitch Trubisky where he only played 1 year, but he was pretty much the same guy for 4 years. And then he comes out in his 5th year. It's the COVID. Because of COVID, he gets that extra year, and he plays in a way that we had never seen him play. I mean, he was very consistent. His 3 years prior to 2021, 12 touchdowns, 6 picks. 13 touchdowns, 9 picks, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks. Quarterback rating between 120.3 and 129.6 in those 4 years. And then he comes out in his last year under Mark Whipple, 42 touchdowns, 7 picks, 4,300 yards, and a quarterback rating over 165. That was the anomaly. Now, maybe the light went on, but it's kind of like that always makes me nervous, especially if I'm talking about a first-round pick, because I feel like if you're going to be a first-round pick of quarterback, you either need to be like elite tools, even if you're not a great quarterback, but elite tools, or you can be a guy that's got I'm pretty confident this guy's going to be a starting quarterback in the National Football League. And to your point, I'm not a draft guy, but when I watched Kenny Pickett play, I was like, he had a great year. He had a great college football season, but he never screamed to me like, boy, that guy's an NFL player. That guy's going to be a really good NFL quarterback. It just never screamed that to me, honestly.
Yep.
And so
Pittsburgh got desperate with a bad quarterback class. So
yep.
The Pittsburgh kid's going to stay home. Whoop-de-doo. Cam Ald with the question.
Great story. They should have done that back in 1983. That's when they should have kept the Pittsburgh kid home.
Marino. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cam Ald, 4 straight punts by Clemson to pin us in our own territory. Why never have 10 on the line to attempt a block or at least put pressure on the punter? CT wasn't Chris Tyree wasn't fielding them anyway. No urgency.
I agree. That's been an issue I've had all year, Ryan. They rarely seem to go for the block, and I've never in today's era where you just can't set, like back in the day, Ryan, I could get it. Back in the 80s, I get it because you're setting up that like wall return and the way punting was back then. Whenever it's like you could set up returns. You can't really set up returns anymore. And I've just been a believer that so then go after them because. Yeah, that's when you get good returns is when, they've got to hold extra guys in to try to protect all of the guys you're bringing. So they're not getting as many guys downfield. So less guys for your returner to make miss. And then occasionally you kick some line drives that your guy can get a running start on, or he booms the heck out of it. And you don't have as many guys running down there and he can go make a long return. So I complained about this under Brian Polian for years and Scott Booker for years of if you're not going to be a dynamic return team, you should be aggressive going after punts. There's a time and a place for that where you don't do that. Like Clemson was at midfield at one point in time, and it was like 4th and maybe 3 or 4 when Notre Dame was in punt safe. I understood that because that's an area where Dabo might be willing to take a risk if you're going to have this, everybody's coming type of moment. The way his defense was playing at that point in time, you could see that, but more often than not, I agree. They need to be more aggressive coming after the punter.
I think Chris Tyree returning punts on Saturday. I think that we hyper-focused on obviously the muff off his face mask, the first one. But after that, he was super gunshot to catch the ball in the air after that too, man. And was just letting it bounce. And you killed field position several times during that football game, man. And with an offense that is struggling, it's like field position matters so much. So if Chris was just like not feeling it after that, right, and he's just like gun shy and his confidence levels out, I'd probably take him out and just put Faison back there and just be like, Faison, you're the number 1 punt returner, dude. Catch the football. Like, catch it. Just catch it in the air. You haven't even asking for a big return. That was a big part of that football game, I thought, was that the field position battle was lost after that muff punt. Lost.
Because of the kick return last week and how important that was, I would give him 1 more week, but I'd say to him, look, dude, you need to catch the ball or I'm going to put somebody back there that will catch the ball. I mean, just simple as that. Because this isn't the first time this has happened, right? It was worse than it's ever been, but he's been inconsistent in that regard from time to time, which is why if you decided to make a move, you decide to make a move. I'd still give him one more week because I still say that punt return last week was huge. But what was equally huge was the mistakes from this week. That's the conversation to have.
I think a different thought process would also be is that if I was a special teams coach, and this is just me talking, out loud, is that I think that I would prefer if you have a guy that is your kind of home run level type of returner, and then you have a guy that's your safe returner, right? And after Chris Tyree muffed that punt, which ended up being a big play, obviously early in that game, maybe no disrespect to Chris, but maybe I put my punt safe guy back there as far as fielding the ball, and then next week Chris gets his opportunity back again in better situations. You know what I mean? I just think that that was a big time.
Let me add a little bit of an adjustment to that to see what you think of this, Ryan. I don't disagree with that premise, but I wouldn't have done it after the muff because I thought the muff was it was bad, but it was understandable because I think it carried, because it happened right in front of me. It carried. And then he got caught being too close. And then as he's backing up, it kind of hits him in a weird spot. But the minute he shows me a lack of confidence fielding it the next time, that's when I'm doing it. That's when I'm doing it.
That's
the issue for me is I don't know that Jordan Faison is a dependable catch the punt guy. I don't know. We've seen enough of him, and I saw enough of him dropping footballs in fall camp because that was my only knock on him in fall camp. Besides, I don't think they can play him because he's going to lose his scholarship for lacrosse. But the issue was he was not the most consistent guy catching the football. Now, that could have been freshman adjusting to college. He wasn't an early enrollee. It could have been that, and I haven't seen him in practice. So I just don't know that he is that guy. In theory, however, whoever that guy is, whether it's him, Jaden Mickey, whoever, I don't care.
Where's Matt Salerno when you need him, baby?
I know,
Where's
right? Seriously. I agree with your premise of the minute a punt returner shows a lack of confidence, that's when you've got to say, hey, man, he doesn't look comfortable going after the football. We've got to make a change and then get him, like you said, then get him right next week. It's no different than you got a really good receiver and he has the case of the drops. You yank him for a couple series and be like, hey, man, get your head right. And then you go back to him. Right. Exactly. Audric Estime fumbling the ball against Navy. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, here we go.
All right. We have our next question from PJC 1122. On Clemson's second touchdown, were Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart hurt, or was it a case of giving the backups reps? If the latter, why didn't the coaches put the starters back in when Clemson was attacking the backups?
Well, I mean, they hit 3 passes on him, and I believe one of the completions was on Benjamin Morrison. If I remember correctly, Ryan, a couple plays before the touchdown, he actually drove on the ball and got a little dinged up. Like he got up off the ground slowly, came off, and then they brought the other backup in. I don't believe it was both backups on the whole drive. I don't believe that was the case. I'm pretty sure I saw Benjamin make up. Now, they were on the opposite side of the field from where I was sitting, so I could be incorrect, but I thought it was Benjamin. And then they went to the backups. My issue wasn't so much that they did that, but it's like, okay, well, if you have to do that, bring Cam Hart back in or bring Thomas Harper in. The fact that you had both backup corners and Clarence Lewis on the field to finish in the red zone, to me was I didn't dig that. But at the same time, guys, this is a week after the backup corners looked freaking lights out against Pitt, right? I mean, sometimes the other team makes plays. There was one where, Benjamin Morrison got beat by Bo Collins on a slant. I was like, that's a great route.
It was a great route.
You know what I'm talking about, right? That was a great route by Bo Collins. Like that. Benjamin, I thought, got a little too high, like on the stem, which allowed Bo to beat him inside. But he went high because of the way Bo released. It was a great route by Bo Collins.
I thought Bo Collins looked pretty good on Saturday, man. He had a pretty good game overall.
Yeah. And so sometimes, but that's the point, though, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, that guy made a good play, and I don't know that Benjamin. My point was, I don't know that Benjamin Morrison would have made those stops either, because they were good scheme. They were attacking the zone. And then on one of them, it was Xavier Watts that made the mistake, not a corner. Xavier overplayed an in cut. So he went this way, and the in cut came. You know which play I'm talking about on that drive, Ryan? They showed the replay, but Xavier took a bad angle, and the guy was running an in cut. And instead of driving here, Xavier went here and then redirected, and the guy caught the ball. So it wasn't just that, but I would say if you're doing a situation where you're giving Cam Hart a rest and Benjamin's in there, and then the next series maybe you reverse it. The minute you got to take Cam out, Benjamin out because he gets dinged up, you've got to put Cam back on the field. I do agree with that. I do agree with that.
We had Cajun Domer half jokingly come to terms that Notre Dame is the Jets Browns of college football, where quarterbacks come to die. Is the Sam Hartman issue different from the previous quarterbacks? Think Gino turns it around.
I have no idea if Gino Guidugli is going to be able to turn it around.
Hopefully.
I'm not saying he will or won't. I'm saying I have no idea. I'm hopeful. Like Ryan said, I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I could sit here and try and talk you off that ledge, but I mean, since 2010, it's kind of true. I think, look, say whatever you want about Charlie Weiss, but he had 3 of his 5 years, he had to eat big-time quarterback play. Big-time quarterback play. 05 and 06, Brady Quinn was a star. In 09, Jimmy Clausen was a star. He just played on a bad team. Like, that's simple as that. I mean, they didn't lose games that year because of Jimmy Clausen. I think it's more of a philosophical thing than it is what you're talking about. But honestly, the results are the results, Ryan. For whatever the excuse, whatever the reason, other justification, I really don't know what to tell you.
Well, and Gino Guidugli could be the greatest quarterback coach of all time, but if it's not an offensive system that allows a quarterback to play their best ball, then it's still going to be inconsistent and it's still not going to be great, right, Cajun Domer? So I think that I'm actually still very hopeful about Gino Guidugli. I've heard a lot of great things about Gino Guidugli as a quarterback developer, as far as knowing the position and being able to get there. So I think the quarterbacks will be well prepared.
Cincinnati. Talking about things you heard from scouts and stuff from Simon Cincinnati. Yes. Good. That's great. Yep. That's great.
Yep. So I think that the quarterbacks will be well prepared. I think, again, my biggest issue is, are offensively they're going to be put in the right position to maximize their strengths? That's what it's going to come down to. So he's definitely going to have some guys to be excited about. I mean, you're going to have Kenny Minchie in year 2. You're going to have CJ Carr come in. If he's around for 2025, you're going to have Deuce Knight coming on campus. Like, talent in the quarterback room is not going to be an issue over the next couple years at Notre Dame.
Nope.
So hopefully an offensive staff is able to take advantage of those offensive strengths. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Old with another one. Why does it seem like all of our passes are second, third level oriented? We had a handful of crossers where our athletes got to make plays. Thought we gave up on run and short stuff way too early.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I thought my issue was more that they just kept running a bunch of short stuff and didn't press them down the field enough. So, I don't agree with that. There was stuff there. We broke it down last night a little bit. There was stuff there, but you got to throw the football. So, I don't think Notre Dame threw the ball down to the third level hardly at all. So, yeah. Now, the run part, I do think that they gave up on the run a little bit too early. That I do agree with. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Thoughts on that, Ryan, or kind of?
I'm pretty much in agreement. Like, again, I just think that there's a stagnation to the passing attack right now. Again, like when I see an offense that's running mesh, that's the most exciting part about an offense. I'm just like, all right, I'm not sure that this is a team that I'm super excited about offensively. So.
Especially they run mesh so slowly. Yes. I'm not talking about guys not being fast. I'm just talking like there's no confidence in their mesh. Takes nuance. It takes work. I mean, there's a level of how to. It's like with anything, Ryan. It's like how to use a referee effectively. How do you know what I mean? How to do it where I feel like Notre Dame's going to get called for a pick almost every other time they run mesh. It's just like, there's just no confidence in how they're doing it, no urgency in how they're doing it, and no counters. For the love of God, if you're going to run this mesh as much as Notre Dame does, you've got to run pivots off of it. You have to. You've got to run stick nods off. You got to do things and say, hey, we're going to show this and I'm going to climb. There's no like, they're sitting on this. What are our answers when teams, this is what we talk about, right? You're just kind of calling plays. They're not building on anything. Clemson was just sitting on their short stuff on Saturday. There was nothing that they did. There's like, when was the last time Notre Dame ran like a sluggo, like a wheel, like any kind of double move? Like, here's a thought. The way Jeremiah Trotter did that play, you know what I would do? I'd have gone right back to empty a series or two later, run that same concept and have a Holden States do a stick nod. At freaking wide open. He'd have been wide open because you can't defend the route the way Jeremiah Trotter did and defend that. You know what I mean? And the middle field is wide open. So that's the stuff that frustrates me, Ryan, is there's no like they're doing this to take this away. let's take advantage of that and do this. Call this. That should be in your arsenal, because part of game planning is, this is what we like. This is what we're good at. They're going to try to do something to stop that. What are our answers for when they do that? Or what are our answers early to make sure that they don't do that? And we just don't. And that's one of the things I dislike him a lot, Ryan, but that's one of the things I love about Lincoln Riley. If you overplay something or you aggressively play something, he will have stuff to burn you with that, assuming you can protect the quarterback, which that's what killed him against Notre Dame, is they just couldn't protect the quarterback. Didn't matter.
Right.
And that's the thing that frustrates me with this pass game, is if they take something away, it's just kind of like Notre Dame's like, well, we're either going to keep running it unsuccessfully, or I guess we're going to have to throw that one away. There's no, they did this, so let's do that.
Yeah.
And it's just
very passing game wise, it's very elementary. Like literally their best plays are things that I ran in high school. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
there's nothing built on top of them. They're just, like we said, this is what we've said. They're just running stuff to run stuff. And it's been that way all year.
Yeah. We had a super chat from exomake_me who Lololo. Okay, there we go. That's what that says. Thank you so much for super chat. What happened to Sam Hartman? Number 10 doesn't play like Sam Hartman. He should do better. This can't be all on him. A 6-year regressing. Saw your comments on offensive line, wide receiver coaching issues. What about quarterback coaching?
I mean, it's all on the table. It's hard for me to say for sure that Gino's the problem, but when your quarterback's playing like this, you have to at least be willing to have the conversation, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. But at the end of the day, you've got to, part of the reason you bring in a 6-year senior, Ryan, is because you don't have to coach him a 1,000 times, like you do Kenny Minchie. He should know how to read 4 verts. I mean, again, guys, I'm pretty sure Gino Guidugli knows how to coach 4 verts. Pretty sure. The play that I broke down last night where he throws it to the field goal route to Jaden Greathouse, guys, that's football 101. Like, he's got to know that. He's got to read that. The play where Rico's wide open, they're running a field triangle and with a backside high-low. Guys, that stuff I ran at the Division III level, and it was day 1 install stuff, right? You're telling me that he hasn't been coached to read it that way? That's why I say there's something else going on. There's a disconnect. There's a lack of confidence. There's something, there's a block, because quarterbacks are like other athletes, Ryan. They get the yips. Great basketball players will go through a couple weeks where they just can't hit a shot. And great baseball players. I mean, I'm Ken Griffey Jr. fan. I grew up watching Barry Larkin play. He's a Hall of Famer. 300 hitter. And there'd be weeks where it's like, this guy is swinging at balls that are bouncing 2 feet in front of the dirt. He's not seeing it right now. It happens.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out how to work that out of him. And my issue is that, like, how did you know that was coming? Because, like, I thought after the couple interceptions early, he rallied back pretty well against Pitt. But the interceptions should have been like that should have been a bit of a red flag, because those are things that led to the reasons for the picks kind of led to the second pick anyway. They're kind of similar. He just decided, I'm going to throw the ball here, and it didn't really matter what the defense did. The second pick was that way. First pick, I still say, was on the wide receiver. But sometimes the stuff is like, okay, I thought he'd been playing pretty well the 2 weeks before, and then he just comes out and so it could just be as simple as played a bad game. There is no bigger thing afoot. You just played a bad game. I mean,
but we've seen it a lot more consistently, though. So it's
no, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, like, how do you know? How are you prepared he's going to play bad that way when I thought he played pretty well against Pitt, outside of the 1 interception? Right, that's my point. Right, and there were things we complained about with Sam statistically, and you look at USC. I thought Sam played well against USC for what they asked him to do. But if you look at the course of a 6-game stretch, and then you look at the numbers, they tell you the whole story. 5 touchdowns, 7 picks, right? That's the bigger thing. But some of the stuff, it's like, guy can't read 4 verts. Like, Ryan, it's your text. Did they break him? Is that what happened? And what was it that broke him? And what was it that broke him? I don't have the answer to that. Is it Gino Guidugli? I don't know. Is it Jared Parker? I don't know. Is it the players around him? I don't know. I wish I knew. I would need to be there every day to know.
Right.
But what we can do is look at it and say, this is what's happening. I don't know why. They got to figure out how to fix it because this can't keep happening. Because I'll say this, they should start him against Wake. But if he comes out and plays against Wake in the first quarter, the way he played against Clemson, you have to make a move because you have to win the football game. Yeah. You have to be prepared if he's going to do that again.
Yeah, I just think there's a very deep issue here. Yeah, we've talked about it a ton already, right? And I think that as a collective, people are too easy to just point fingers to one side of the argument, right? Oh, Sam stinks. He's overrated. We should never have gotten him. It'll be better next year. And I'm just like, guys, there has to be a deeper issue here. Like there has to be. You don't turn a kid that was as productive as he was, and not just productive on a lower level. Like he torched Clemson last year, a team that he just was awful against. You don't take him to the team and just be like, oh man, he sucks. Like he was just a product. And I'm just like, no, that's not how that works. Like he might be a product to a degree as far as like what the level of production would be. But if you watch Sam Hartman in Wake Forest and said to yourself, hey, when you trade him over to Notre Dame, he's just going to be Drew Pine.
Yep.
No,
yep.
no,
and
thank you.
You want further evidence why it's not just the system? He's not there anymore, and Wake's offense sucks. Right? Are you telling me that T. Perry and Sam Higgins or Sam Hartman, excuse me, you're going to tell me it's A.T. Perry is the reason they're scoring 16 points less per game, and why their quarterbacks this season have 10 touchdowns and 9 picks? Is that what you're going to tell me? No, it's because they don't have Sam Hartman and A.T. Perry. Sam Hartman's a big reason for that. So if it's a system thing, then it doesn't matter who's running the system, correct? I mean, it's good. It's like the difference between the Bailey Zappi kid and then the kid that replaced the Austin Reed. Austin Reed was still pretty good. He didn't put up the monster numbers that Bailey Zappi did, but he still put up really good numbers, right? This has been an utter collapse of Wake Forest. So that kind of pushes back against the whole, well, it was only the system and he was never really that good to begin with.
Right.
If like the Louisville quarterbacks were out there throwing for, something close to what Sam did, then you'd say, maybe it was just the system. Maybe that was it. But their offense is absolutely collapsed without him and A.T. Perry. I mean, absolutely collapsed. Because they still have some good receivers on that team, man. They do. And their pass game stinks.
Yep. Nathan Milton, regardless of Sam Hartman performance, he's a class act. I would agree. I've never heard a single negative thing about Sam Hartman. I agree 100%.
The only negative I've heard are about performance. I wish he'd throw to that guy more. Needs to read that out more. But that does have to do with your character. And And that leads into, Ryan, also to my decision to say I'm not benching Sam Hartman just because he had a bad game against, because he's not playing well, because he is doing it right. And there is a level of, because of the moment you play him, I will say this again, you need to have somebody ready to go that if he starts doing that again against Wake, you have to make a move, because Notre Dame cannot lose. Right now you can say, hey, look, they lost to some talented teams or good teams. You go out and lose to Wake or Stanford, and it'll be way worse than it was last year, because you had the year one sort of mulligan last year. They cannot afford to lose another game. Cannot afford to lose another game.
Yeah. Let's not even think about it. Yeah, Michael S. Super chat. Marcus Freeman wanted an experienced offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. He is an experienced offensive line coach, by the way, but that's another conversation for another day. Didn't get administrative support. That needs to change.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of the thing when the Ludwig thing fell through. You didn't just lose your offensive coordinator. You also lost who was going to be your offensive line coach. But end of the day, guys, I've said this before. Jared Parker is eventually going to be the offensive coordinator of Notre Dame at some point, whether it was replacing Tom Reese or replacing Jared Parker. So, look, I don't. Yeah. Ludwig. Yes. What he was going to be, whether he was replacing Reese or replacing Ludwig.
Yep.
We can talk about the administration support, and I agree, Ryan. We hammered them for how that all went down last year. But at the end of the day, Marcus Freeman was not forced to hire Jared Parker.
Sure.
If he wanted to go outside the program, he could have used what happened with Andy Ludwig as sort of a catalyst to say, hey, you want to save face? then let me go get this guy, and you pay for it.
Right.
You know what I mean? He immediately turned to Jared Parker because he believes that Jared Parker can be that guy. You can disagree with it. You can think he's nuts, but Marcus Freeman did not have Jared Parker thrust upon him because of what happened with Andy Ludwig.
Right.
He quickly turned to Andy Ludwig. And I think, Jared Parker, and I truly believe that ultimately, I don't think he was super upset about that. I don't think he liked how it went down, but I don't think he looks at it like we do in that, oh, you had to settle for this guy because you didn't get Andy Ludwig. I don't think Marcus Freeman looks at it that way. Right or wrong, I don't think that's how he views it. I think he viewed Jared Parker as a coach that can flat out run the system the way he wants it run. I think that's more of the issue right there. But yes, he needs administration support to do all those things. There's no doubt. But I think we also need to accept the fact that Marcus Freeman doesn't view it the way we do as fans. That's the other part.
For them ultimately get to where they want to be, though, he does need administrative support moving forward. I would
100%.
Yeah.
To where if he decides, hey, you know what, I made this decision, it was the wrong one, I need to go out there and do this, then they need to support him. Or Al Golden leaves, hey, I want to go get this guy or whatever. Or I need to go get the best strength coach in the country. This guy makes a lot of money. He's got a buyout. We got to make it happen. Then go get it. Then go do it. Like 100% correct, Ryan. 100% correct.
Yep.
I just don't think he hired Jared Parker because a lack of administrative support is all I'm saying. I think they dropped the ball. I think they screwed up. I think that they made some bad decisions as an administration standpoint, but I don't think Marcus Freeman views it as like this huge step down to hire Jared Parker, like fans did.
Right.
That's my point.
Charlie Weiss's last belt lube with the super chat. What's up, Charlie? Hi, IB. Is Jared Parker running Tommy Rees's offense or the offense he wants to run? It feels the exact same as last year at times, or is this Coach Marcus Freeman's approach? Thank you.
The latter. It's Marcus Freeman's approach. Yeah, this is not Tommy Rees's offense.
He's fitting his offense into the overall what the philosophy is, in my opinion. Yep. Would agree. TD Brammy 4, thank you so much for the super chat. If you could make one attribute from your playing career and make it elite, what would it be? How would you see your career playing out differently? Oh man.
I know what mine would be. I wish I was 6'4", 220. That's what I wish.
I also wished I was 6'4", 220.
Yeah.
I also wish I was
like honestly, I absolutely think that if I had that, my career would have turned out a whole lot differently. Yes. I was a 6 foot, 185-pound drop back quarterback.
Yep. I was a 6 foot, 220-pound linebacker. Yeah. So being 6'3" would have been a big help.
What's funny is like short quarterbacks at the time were just like, you just weren't going to do it. I went to a camp at NC State. I got invited to it was one. This is back when they would have like those 3-day like overnight camps. You know what I mean? And so I went down there. I got invited to go down there. They started recruiting me when I was at University Christian in Jacksonville. And I was in that. They had like that group of like 2 groups of like the guys that they're recruiting. And I think I had like the second or third fastest miles per hour. I had like the second or third longest deep ball. I had the second best 40 time, and they wouldn't give me the time of day. And I asked a guy that was there, I was like, dude, what's going on? Like, you guys, because it was expensive to go to those camps back in the day, Ryan. They were like $300. Sure. I'm like, you invite me here, you recruit me here, I get here, and you don't spend the time of day with me. I said, I'm dominating in reps. I'm like, I'm ripping, I'm doing all this. Why are they not paying attention to me? And the guy goes, see that kid right there? And it was this kid from Pennsylvania that sucked. He was terrible. He couldn't hit the broad. So he's like, but he was like 6'5", 225, 230. He goes, I can teach him to throw a football. I can't teach you to be 6'5". And I was like, all right. That was my reality check. You know what I mean? Like, but what the best part about it is I'm trying to remember the kid's name. The best part about it though is the guy that ended up starting at quarterback for them. I think it's Jamie Barnett is who it was. But the guy that ended up starting at quarterback for them was during my college tenure was 6 feet tall. So like it was I think it was Jamie Barnett. I think it's who it was. Yeah, Jamie Barnett. He was right before Phillip Rivers. So he was like 6 feet tall. And I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Then they went and got Phillip Rivers. They found their 6'5" guy. They eventually found him. Yeah. Yeah. Just Wasn't me.
Yeah.
No, good question, man. That's fun. That's fun. So Ryan, you and I same page. I wish I was bigger. Wish I was a little
Yeah.
bit taller.
Well, arm length and heights was my
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I didn't have long arms. I could run pretty good, and I could thump pretty well, but I was not the longest or tallest guy in the world. So yeah.
Yep.
Stephen Martin with the question. Brian and Ryan, I needed this show more than you guys could imagine. Thanks for the reassurance and analysis. Of course, Stephen. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Next question is from Matt S. Says, does what we are seeing offensively jive with the players being recruited and commits they are landing as far as skill sets, etc.?
No, that's what makes it so mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It's like they're not, which again leads me to believe that whatever the reason, they don't view the talent as they view the talent as being an issue or the experience or something. I mean, that's what just makes this whole thing so puzzling because you're not recruiting to what you're running in a lot of ways. It's just, yeah.
It's weird. It's gonna be weird.
Yep.
Just gonna throw Cam Williams in the slot, baby. Can't play outside.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know.
I know, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Michael S. As of now, does Notre Dame go to the portal for a quarterback?
100% yes, they're going to go to the portal for a quarterback. They're going to need a fourth arm. I mean, that's just because let's just say Steve Angeli gets beat out by Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr. I don't think he stays. I mean, I've given up on thinking a kid's going to stay till he gets his degree at quarterback when Drew Pine left. If Drew Pine's not going to stay, then I don't trust anyone's going to stay for 4 years to get their degree, Ryan. Nobody. That was the most Notre Dame kid I've ever seen.
So I do the podcast with Matt Sims, Brian, and he actually knows Drew personally. He was like, Drew Pine's transferring from Notre Dame?
Right.
I never would have bet on that one happening.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
By the way, you and Joe and Matt do a great job on that show, Ryan.
Oh,
so if you guys haven't seen it, they do a show on Believe and they talk. It's a really good show. It's really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you've got so let's say you don't go to the portal to get that fourth guy because we got three guys we like, and then one of them leaves or gets hurt. Even if he doesn't leave, let's say somebody gets hurt. You've got two quarterbacks. Nah, you're going to need to go to the portal. The question is going to be, are they going to the portal for a starter or are they going to the portal for a backup? And the starter could be stud or, look, we need competition. We need somebody to come in there and compete. But there's, it's just as long as it's a true open competition, I can live with that kind of guy. Like the kid that went to UCLA, right?
Colin Schlee.
Now he's starting now for them again, correct?
He came in, I think, but I think he went 0 for something passing, but he had a rushing touchdown. Maybe.
Okay, so it's Garbers that's the starter.
Ethan Garbers.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
But like, as long as it's a true open competition, you had the freshman that came in, the stud freshman, you had the transfer that came in who had started somewhere else, and you had the kid that was already there. And they've started all three of them at some point in time. You know what I mean? As long as my point is, as long as there's an open competition, a genuine open competition, and you're not going to lean towards the more experienced guy, okay, that's fine. Sure. But to me, if anything, I would lean more towards the kid that's already there. Is how I would go at it. But yes, they will go to the portal. There's no doubt about that. It's just, who's there and what level is there. That's a different conversation for a different day that we'll focus on even more after the season.
I was going to say it's going to be a great conversation for the offseason.
Yeah,
great conversation.
But again, do you know who's in the portal right now? I don't know.
No one does.
Exactly.
Well, I'm sure someone does, but that stuff's behind the scenes.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. And again, most of these kids are right now still worried about their seasons, their agents, their parents, or whatever doing that crap. But then they sit down that season, the kid's like, I'm not leaving. That happened last year too. There's kids that parents had worked out things and then who's interested in all that. And then when the season came to an end and they talked to the kid about it, the kid was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. Why would I leave here? I like it here. And that factors into it as well.
We had another question from TD Brammy. Thank you so much. What player game do you regret the most as a coach or player or both?
I don't know that I have any regrets as a player. Maybe just because I've already kind of moved on past that. As a coach, I don't know that I have a game that's a regret. I have a season that's a regret. I thought our '05 season at Christopher Newport was a frustrating season that I thought we as coaches did not do right by our players as a group, and we should have been a lot better. We went 6-4. We had way more talent than we did the year before when we went to
Yeah.
the second round of the playoffs, and I just felt we didn't do a good job of embracing who that team was and building leadership. We just kind of assumed that leadership would emerge, and so I still look back at that season with regret. But no, I don't. I mean, again, I don't really look at it like I used to. If you'd asked me this question 15 years ago, I would have had immediate answers for you. But I've kind of moved past that. I'm pretty happy with
Have
my
you ever
life right now.
have you ever seen We Are the Millers, the movie?
Parts of it,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, there's a
Like when
guy
it's
in
on the
there
background.
that had no regrets on his
I've seen that.
chest, and that's it, man. No regrets. It's my credo.
No regrets. Yeah. I guess the thing I look at it is like, there's some things that happened to me as a player in high school where I got screwed over a little bit, and same thing in college, and that stuff used to kind of get to me. But the reality is, those things set me on a path that I was a better coach because of what I went through as a player. Because you look at these young men not just as resources to get to my end. You look at them as young people that this is their last chance to play football. And even when it means you got to bench them sometimes, there's a right and a wrong way to treat people. And I tried to learn that. I think I would not have been as good of a coach if I didn't go through those experiences as a player. I wouldn't be the man I am today had I not had to learn to overcome that type of adversity and that type of heartache where I'd put my whole life. Like, I didn't party in college. I didn't date in college. Like, my whole life was football. And then it ends up being taken away. And you're like, I just wasted my college. That was your initial reaction as a 20-something. But then you look back now as a 45-year-old and a married man saying, would all of this have led to where I am now and to my wife now and my life now had I not gone through that? And it's like, I don't know, but I do know that led me here. And I like where I'm at. I have a great wife. I have a great life. I'm very blessed, very fortunate. And if things would have gone better for me when I was 18, maybe they wouldn't have gone as well for me when I'm 45. And I would not make that trade. Sorry, I would not make that trade.
Biggest football regret. I was playing a flag football league about 4 years ago. I pulled my left calf muscle, and instead of being the smart older person that I was at that point, a 28-year-old, I'm like, you know what? I'm coming back in 2 weeks. You know what I did there, folks? I overcompensated and I pulled the right calf muscle. So we need to learn from our regrets here. Yes, that was my biggest regret in life, is that what came back too fast from a pulled calf muscle. There you go. Which hurts really bad, by the way. You can't even bend your ankle. Like, it sucks. Don't ever have that happen to you. We had Joe Alt-Delete, which is still one of the best names on here. Do you fear that in the big games, Marcus Freeman will double down on his offensive philosophy because he can point to moments where if execution was better, the final result would have been in our favor?
Yes, I do. And the reason I do, Ryan, is because I've heard Marcus Freeman justify losses in ways this year he didn't last year. Was it you and I that talked about that, or was it me and Vince that talked about that?
I believe we did at some point.
Yeah, that's a red flag for me. Is last year was like no excuses, I own it, and this year it's like, well, it sounds a lot like 2015. If we just play here, play there, we're in much better shape. And which is if he's saying that publicly, but he doesn't actually believe that, fine. But my concern is that, but what if he believes it? That's a concern, because then he's not going to make the necessary changes. And I'm not talking about, again, personnel changes. I'm talking about philosophical changes. If that's what he believes, we just got to play a little better and practice a little harder, then it's not going to ultimately change, in my opinion.
Yep. I mean, I talked about that with the media availability he had, where he just was hyper focusing on the fumbled punt and the interception for a touchdown. And I'm just like, yeah, those are issues. There's no doubt. But like, is that the number one issue offensively? Like, no, it's not. It's not. So hopefully that's just a media conversation, right? Like, it could be, but ultimately that is going to limit how good of a program you could be if that is your mindset. Because you're going to win some of those games, but you're also going to lose some of those games, right? You're going to lose a lot of those games. So I think that it has to change. There's no doubt.
All right, let's get to some more here, Ryan.
We had Matt H. Could it be a vicious cycle of Sam Hartman doesn't trust receivers? They don't play as hard, don't get opportunities, confidence drops, repeats.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean, yeah,
absolutely something
it's
to
all
that. Yeah,
interrelated. It's all interrelated, Matt. I mean,
yeah,
it's a cycle, man, which is why I always say that it's never just one thing, right? It's a ripple effect of this isn't playing well right now. Sam Hartman isn't trusting his eyes because maybe there's some drops early in the season. Maybe there's a free blitzer that came through, and then it has a ripple effect in all realities. I mean, and especially at the quarterback position where you are so dependent on making the really great ones, making guys around you better, right? Making a protection right, making a wide receiver look better because of ball placement and that type of thing. That if a position isn't playing well, that could have a ripple effect on wide receivers lacking confidence, offensive line lacking confidence, running backs lacking confidence. And this isn't even a remark of this is directly from Sam Hartman on the way down, but like this ripple effect can happen and it has happened. And I think it is happening. I think there has been a ripple effect of lack of confidence all around this offense right now.
yeah. If you're a receiver and you're being called to run all these deep routes and you know your quarterback's name giving you time of day, eventually you're going to be like, all right, I'm not running. I mean, that's just human nature when you're that age, Ryan. Why should I run hard? This guy's not going to be throwing me the freaking ball. And then, but see, you can't be that way. That's not okay. But that's human nature. And then you start forcing. Well, shoot, he's not going to throw it to me. But the one time he does, like, oh crap, I gotta make this catch, or he's never going to throw me the ball again. And then you start putting pressure on yourself, and you drop the ball because of that. Absolutely, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
That all that's, and then of course now that hurts Sam's confidence. And we'll throw you to you again. Absolutely, it all plays together, no doubt.
Happens all the time. We had another question from Michael Pates. Thank you, Michael. How much of the not showing up falls on the leaders of the team? I feel like past Notre Dame teams are ready to play despite the coaching staff. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
I mean, there were plenty of times. I mean, Miami 2017,
Yeah.
Michigan 2019. I mean, there's a lot of examples. Virginia Tech 2020, 2019. I mean, there's a lot of examples where Notre Dame was just kind of going through the motions, right?
I think for the most part, Marcus Freeman led teams have showed up in the big games. Like it hasn't always
Yeah.
been the result, but like you played tough against Ohio State 2 straight years and had a chance to win that football game this year. You played well against USC this year. Clemson, I mean, yeah, you got off to a terrible start, but like you still fought back and were a touchdown away from tying this game. You should have tied it, honestly, at some points. But
His question doesn't say big games, and I do think there have been games where this team doesn't just show up. Right. I mean, Stanford last year, Louisville this year, where they're just, and when I mean not show up, it's just like there's just no fire. Right. Like that's what that's that. And so, yeah, I think that part of that's on the leaders of the team. Certainly. It's not only on them. That's part on the coaches too. But like Ryan, I think there's a lot of good leaders in a lot of different areas of Notre Dame. But like, who's that rah get in your face guy on offense? We know who it is on defense.
Maybe Audric at times, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But like we know who it is on defense. I mean, you talk to anybody around the program, JD Bertrand never shuts up. Like on the sideline, like never shuts up. And I mean that in a positive way. Like he's saying something to get you focused, get you locked in, get you ready to go. Like he's always talking. Right? Now, it's not like in your face screaming at you kind of way, but it's always, hey, let's go. Like the great video against Duke, where he talks about, hey, we needed 3. Or something about like, I forget what it was, but he said something like, we got 2, we need 3. And then they go out and get that turnover. Something like that. I forget. It was something like that, Ryan, right? Where it's just like, he's always like, stay on task, guys. That's what that kind of stuff is. It's stay on task, stay on task, stay on task. Joe Walt's a lead by example guy, right? I think Audric is to a degree as well. Sam's not a get in your face kind of guy. I don't know that they really have that on offense. I don't know they really have that fiery, get your head out of your what type of dude. And
they need a Kyron Williams on that team somewhere.
That's a great example. That's a great example, Ryan, because he was, if you weren't blocking, Kyron was going to come get in your face and you know what I mean? But also he was energetic in a positive way too. It wasn't just getting in your face yelling
Kyron
at
Williams.
you. Quentin
He's
Nelson
one of
was
my
that
favorite
way.
players of all time, man. I loved Kyron Williams. That dude played the game right. I love that.
But Quentin Nelson was that leader for the 17 team. You talk to other players like, if I remember I've said before, Alex Bars would say, man, like the reason we practice so hard is because if we didn't, we knew Quentin. I didn't want to have to deal with Quentin. Like that, like there were days I didn't feel like, I mean, every player has this, Ryan. You know this. There's practices you're
Yeah.
just, dude, I don't want to be out here. I got 3 finals this week. Like I just do not want to be here right now. I'm hurting. But man, if you practice that way, Quentin Nelson was going to let you know that that's not acceptable because he never practiced that way. He was going to bring it. If it was Tuesday in the middle of fall camp, he was going to bring it. And if you didn't, he was going to let you know about it. Who's that guy for the current offense? I don't know that they have that guy. I think they have a couple guys like that on defense. And so, have you ever watched Howard Cross talk in press conference?
Not really. Not as much.
You know that guy that just kind of has that, I'm way more confident in myself than I probably should be, and that's why I'm good kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's the swagger that Howard Cross has. But, like, that permeates to guys around him because that guy's going to bring it every day, and you've got to bring it every day to match it. There's a lot of guys like that on defense. I don't know that there's a lot of guys like that on offense. That's where the coaches have to fill into the void and provide that. And clearly they're not able to do that right this second.
We had Nicholas Grosh said, should we or could we start playing for 2024 and 2025 against Wake and Stanford? I feel like while I realize that could be awkward for Hartman, we have to start making the tough decisions now.
Every decision you make right now needs to be about beating Wake Forest. I'm sorry. Now, does that mean you cannot, maybe play younger guys as part of the rotation? I mean, I'm always for that, Ryan. I'm for that 4 weeks ago. But you have to beat Wake Forest and you have to beat Stanford. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
You definitely can't have a collapse where it's like 7-5, 8-4. It's like, oh my God, man, this is even worse than I thought it was.
And even if you beat those teams, but it's like sloppy and ugly, it's like, you're just like, you're not feeling good about this team coming into the offseason, going to the offseason. You got to win.
Yeah.
Now, are there roles for those guys? Sure. I mean, like if they decide, hey, we're getting nothing outside, let's give Braylon James a shot. That's not like punting to the next season. We're looking for answers. And so let's give this kid a shot. It's got to be that.
There's a couple decisions that probably should have been made already that maybe you revisit a little bit harder this week, right? Where it's like, maybe Braylon gets some playing time. Maybe we implement Jeremiah Love a little bit differently. Maybe we start to ramp up Eli Raridan's targets in the passing game now that he's healthier. Maybe we give the offensive lineman some chance to compete. Like
Billy Stroud,
decisions that can
Charles
be made.
Jagasol, something like exactly. Maybe Cooper Flanagan's that guy you start getting more touches to as well. You know what I mean? Like, so sure, but those are things. Those aren't punting for next year. That's what we're doing right now ain't working, and we think those kids can get a shot to go help us win this next football game.
Yeah,
this question's kind of related to what we discussed here a second ago, Ryan, from Brandon about captains and leadership and stuff.
Brandon's question. Thank you for the super chat, Brandon. Do you think the lesser number of captains this year than usual has any correlation with this team offense not playing with an edge or being mentally prepared?
No, because if you have 1 captain, 2 captains, or 8 captains, you don't need to be a captain to be a leader. Right. Simple as that. Like if JD Bertrand wasn't a captain, do you think that would change at all that he's the leader of the defense? It would not.
Right.
It would not. And so I don't think you need a C on your chest to be a leader. And so it's a fair question, Ryan, but it just I don't think that's the case. I
agree.
Because I'm almost at the point where it's like you go act in a way where you almost force them to retroactively like, hey, you know what? Like we got to make this kid a captain. We got to put the C on his chest because this guy's our leader. Like do that. Give me that.
I guess if we look at it from the other way, though, for Brandon's question, there's an interesting conversation of, is the fact that there were not that many players that earned captainship a direct correlation to why this team maybe lacks that leadership in certain areas,
fair.
Which is, I think that is an interesting question, Brandon. And I think there's some validity to that question.
That is a very fair point.
Lack of numbers equals maybe there was questionable amount of leadership in some areas. I think that makes a lot of sense. I could get behind that part.
Yep. Very fair question.
Yeah. Aiden Benami, thank you again for another super chat. What's one goal you would have for each side of the ball to finish out the season? For Marcus Freeman, 2. Hopefully no negative rumblings coming from the locker room.
Well, offensively for me, Ryan, I just want them to go out these next 2 2 games and just play aggressively and confidently on offense, right? Get the ball out to your playmakers and just play with confidence and just light it up. That's what I want to see offensively. Defensively, I want to see you shut down the run game. I don't want to see either one of these two teams run on you, because that's been probably that's the one thing about this defense that really bothers me the most. And then all the things that go into that, like we talked about last week, Clemson's offense was really low, like ranked really low on tackles for loss allowed, meaning they gave up a lot of tackles for loss, and Notre Dame did very little to disrupt their run game. Like, that concerns me. So I need to see them finish strong in that regard. That would be my one for defense, because if they can shut down the run game, it's like this with anybody. I mean, Wake Forest's pass game is a hot mess. And if they can't run the football, and they're not even great at running the football, to be honest with you, but if you shut that down, they have no chance. I mean, you'll blow them out.
Yeah.
So,
I think defensively, you're going to be playing against two teams that have largely struggled offensively. Like, Wake Forest has not been a good offensive team. Stanford has had like a couple good games offensively, at least passing wise, but they have not been a great offense either. So defensively, just get it back, man, and be the dominant force that you've been mostly this season. Like, you've been an elite group for the most part, and I just want that to continue, obviously, down the stretch here. Offensively, I want to see some fun, man. Like, I just want to see guys look like they're having fun, because I think that'll be a direct indicator of if there is any juice or there's any momentum being built on the offensive side of the football, is if guys look like they're having fun, man. Right now, it just seems like a chore to play offense for a team right now.
It's going to say something about the leadership of the offense, too, at a coaching level, if that's the case as well. So do you go into the meetings the next 2 weeks and just rip your guys new ones? Or do you, hey, you know what, fellas, this is on us. We have jacked this thing up. We're gonna go out here and we're gonna practice hard. We're gonna practice fast, and we're gonna have some fun out here, man. And that's a great point, Ryan. Great point.
Yeah. There's no juice, man. Trevor Rocket with a super chat. Thank you so much, Trevor. Joining late. I know the season has not met expectation. Call me old school. I want to see the lads win out and have a chance to win a 10th game, which is that aspect is an improvement in year 2. Hashtag Lindsay Tough. I would like to get them to see them get to 10 wins. Yes, Trevor, I agree.
Yeah.
If you get to 9 in the regular season and you win a bowl game, hopefully you can at least take something from it, right? If you finish strong down the stretch. I think there's still some things to play for. Not from a fan perspective, because the fans will say it's still an underwhelming season. Sure, I'm there. I got you guys. But from a program perspective, for the people inside, the coaches, the players, there is still an opportunity to build momentum into the offseason. There is still that opportunity there. So I think if they get to 10 wins, hopefully you've made some changes down the stretch where the players are feeling better about themselves and what they're feeling right now going into the offseason. So I think, yeah, Trevor, you don't have to be a super optimism to say that Notre Dame still has some momentum that they could build down the stretch. I would say that.
I think two things can be true at the same time, Ryan, and these are the two truths that I think can be there. Number one is Notre Dame going 10-3 is an improvement. It is. Against a tougher schedule, you had a better record. You didn't lose to any bad teams like Stanford, okay? But you can also then say, but this season, based on expectations, was a disappointment. Those things can both be true. And to your point and to Ryan's point, if you finish strong, it still can be a disappointment, but you can still go into the offseason with some good positive vibes and momentum. And a perfect example is the 2014 season. That season was an absolute dumpster fire. But that win over LSU in the bowl game, a game that nobody thought they had a chance to win, gave that team a ton of confidence going into the offseason. A ton of confidence going into the offseason. More than a team that in 8-5 and had home losses to Northwestern and Louisville should have had. You know what I mean? Like, but
is that when they lost to Reggie Bonifant at quarterback for Louisville,
who eventually moved to wide as a true freshman, eventually moved to wide receiver? Yes,
and now as an NFL running back. Yeah,
yes. And Northwestern team was like 2-7, 3-6, or something like that coming to that game. Yeah. It was a bad stretch of football, really bad stretch of football.
We had another one from Trevor. I kind of said the same thing yesterday, and for the first time, Notre Dame is probably going to have opt-outs for the bowl game, if not before. I hate that chance to win 10 games.
They've had opt-outs before. Last year, Michael Mayer and Isaiah Foskey didn't play.
Kyron Williams
And,
opted out a couple
yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, there was another one. It was Kyle Hamilton. Him and Kyle Hamilton both did
Yeah.
2 years ago. So, yeah, they've had opt-outs before.
Yeah.
That's not new.
And I actually don't think there's going to be a ton, Trevor. Like, I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I was just thinking about like players that could potentially opt out who are draft eligible. Just like,
Mhm.
you know, Joe Alt, Audric, Cam Hart, maybe. Like outside of that, it's like, is it really that guy that I look at and say, like,
Right.
yeah, definite opt out? I don't know. I'm not sure
Right.
about that.
Who'd
So
you
we'll
say?
see.
You said Joe Walton who? Cam Hart?
I said
Is that who
Joe
you said?
Alt, Cam Hart, and Audric Estime would be the three that I would like look at.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe Sam Hartman, but like maybe not. I mean, he still has some stuff to prove on
Right.
the field, right? I mean, so like
Right.
maybe not. I don't know. So
Right. That's an interesting one. Let
Yeah.
me read this one, Ryan, because I'll have you answer it. This is from Brandon. Brandon asks, thanks for the soup chat, Brandon. Brandon asks, are there any true freshmen starting quarterbacks you know of this year?
I mean, Dante Moore was starting, but he got benched, so he's not starting anymore. I'm trying to think. I mean, not true freshmen. There's a couple redshirt freshmen that I can think of, but I don't think so. I mean, I'm really trying to think, Brandon. Like I'm trying to do this question justice. Like I Dante Moore was starting for a little bit. Other than that, like I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't know. Dante Moore was starting. He got benched. As of right now, I don't think there was a true freshman starting that I know of, at least at the high levels. I don't think so.
I'm actually looking right now, Ryan, to see if there's anybody.
I know there's a couple of redshirt freshmen. Like I know
Right.
the Colorado State quarterback that's put up some
Right.
decent passing numbers is a redshirt freshman. I can't think of a ton of true freshmen though. I really can't.
Yeah. I'm going. The UNLV kids, I don't believe is a true the Arizona kid, I don't believe is a true freshman. And I mean, most of the freshmen I'm seeing are kids at like FBS schools.
I mean, like
Jaden
Rashada started a couple games, but he's not the starting quarterback for Arizona State now.
Did he get
either.
hurt?
Like I don't know. I just know they have that Trenton Bogut kid or whatever his name is
Yeah.
starting now. So
And I think Drew Pine got hurt as well, I believe.
Yeah.
But real quick question. Here's an answer. Stephen Martin, has anyone ever seen the movie Edge of Tomorrow? I have, and I actually thought it was
I don't even know what
surprisingly
that
good.
is.
It's
What is
with
Edge of Tomorrow?
Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt,
Okay.
where he
Is
keeps
it
repeating the
is this
same
newer? Or
day.
is this
Within the last 10 years or so.
okay.
It's actually a pretty entertaining movie. Like it's a really, like when I first heard the preview for it, Ryan, I said, this sounds stupid. But then I watched and I was like, dude, this is really well done. Like surprisingly well done. I think you'd actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good movie.
Okay.
It's a pretty good movie.
Take a look.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like, I'm sorry, I'm thinking back to the last question, and I just saw in the chat, like Emory Williams for Miami started one football game. He didn't start this last
Right.
week.
That was due to injury, correct?
Yep.
That was due to injury. Yeah.
Yep. I'll have to watch Edge of Tomorrow though. I'm like hit or miss on Tom Cruise movies, but like I'll watch anything.
When it's good, it's really good. Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing with agree.
He's very hit or miss.
The one it was a Collateral he did with Jamie Foxx. I thought that was a terrible movie.
I saw that one actually. I did see that.
Yeah,
one.
there's been some he did one with Nicole Kidman back in the day. I'm trying to remember what it was called, and I didn't like that one at all. Where they were like, it was like they were settling the West or something. It's like Far and Away, I think is what it was called. It was like a
never seen that.
Movie you take a date on, and I was like, nah, I didn't like that. He's been in some ones I didn't like, but when his movies are good, they're really good. Yeah. Like somebody had me watch. Whoever was the person that told me to watch the Mission Impossibles, I did watch them all. They're pretty good. They're pretty. I didn't like oh my god, these are phenomenal, but they were good. They were good.
Yeah, I like Mission Impossible. He had some good ones back in the day, like Jerry Maguire and such.
Yeah,
too, which were really
good.
That
was a great one. Minority Report was a really interesting movie. I had to watch it twice to get into it. Oblivion was okay. Like that was that was a little bit dull for me. Did you watch that one where they were on that space station and it was it was all right. It was. If you get time to watch it and you're bored, watch it. Otherwise, I don't care.
People don't do space movies very well. Now that I think about it,
it wasn't like a space movie. It was like they were in like this space station and they were like protecting Earth, and there had been like it's just I don't want to say too much because then I'll give it away. But yeah, it was okay. It was just kind of boring. I thought it was kind of
okay.
Few Good Men was a phenomenal movie. That's probably my favorite Tom Cruise movie. A Few Good Men. Yeah. Yep. And that's saying a lot because Tom Cruise, I mean, he's got, I mean, both Top Guns are in my favorite movies of all time, but Few Good Men is probably my favorite. Everybody's talking about Eyes Wide Shut. No, I never saw that one. I'm talking about that's not the Nicole Kidman movie. I think it was called Far and Away. I think is what it was called. Something like that.
What's Eyes Wide Shut?
They were from Ireland. It's you don't even want to know. It was
okay.
Yeah.
Never heard of it, so it must be great.
Yeah, you don't want to know. Man, it was somebody said Tom Cruise is a heck of an actor, but a weirdo out in the world. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
That's a lot of actors, man.
Yeah.
You know who I heard is like the weirdest dude ever is shoot, what's his name? He was in National Treasure. What's the guy's name?
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage is like the weirdest.
A great movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A great movie,
National
by
Treasure.
the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My wife just put in there, Ryan. I was a bit worried he was going to say Eyes Wide Shut too. We were about to have words, and I'm thinking, hold on a second. I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut. How does my wife know what Eyes Wide Shut are about?
Oh, yeah.
So now we are going to have words in a different conversation.
She's seen it. She's seen it.
I never saw Eyes Wide Shut. So, but and Tim O'Malley's busting my chops. He said that I have to, during the bye week, have to watch All the Right Moves. He said he's pulling my football cards. It's like an 80s football movie. I've never seen that one. So
I've seen.
If I don't watch All the Right Moves by the end of the week, Tim O'Malley might not be my friend anymore. Is what he basically threatened. So I've got to figure out a way to watch it. So I'm gonna have to watch that one this week for my guy Tim. So yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
We had.
All right.
Next question is pulling up slow for me. There it is. Brandon Plesner. How does Marcus Freeman address all these issues on offense? How would you go about it if you were head coach? Because there are clear issues from personnel usage to philosophy to play calling to execution to mentality, offensive line, quarterback, and wide receiver play.
It's building blocks, right? I mean, it's some of the things that you do take care of those other things, right? Like philosophy will impact play calling, execution, mentality, and then all the other things, right? And then once you figure out who your philosophy is going to be, then it's how do we implement it? So it's building blocks, but it comes down to you've got to adjust your philosophy and you've got to adjust how you prepare.
Right.
Because even if you keep the same philosophy, if you change your preparation, it's still going to be better. It won't be good enough. You won't win a championship, but it'll be better because the philosophy will be the same against Pitt as it was against Clemson. That's the difference.
Yeah. You need to prioritize what the initiative is, Brandon, right? Like, what are the more important things? Because usually they cascade down into other parts of the game that would be very important. So, Brian, can you read this one for me? I just wanted to get this one up. If you,
Vince D'Addario, how have you not seen All the Right Moves? I played football, Vince. I didn't need to watch a movie about it. You know what I mean? Like, I know for you're playing in the triple option offense, so it didn't really feel like you were actually playing football. I completely understand, but no, he was just
stalk blocking outside in the triple option.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but I actually played football, and so no, I don't know. It's like a Band of Brothers. I'd never seen that. I never saw Saving Private Ryan until recently. I love war movies. For me, war. I like war documentaries more than necessarily war movies. You know what I mean? And I'm such a dork when it comes to like history movies. I'm like, that never really happened. That never really happened. That never really. You know what I mean? It's just like I can't enjoy it as much sometimes. And that's kind of the reason I think the second midway is better than the first midway, because the second midway was much more close to the actual event and how it went down than the first one was, where they had like just made up characters. So. But so people have told me Jason, and I've heard Band of Brothers is great. I need to watch it because some history, like stuff like that, I really enjoy. It's just, will I make the time to watch it or not? So
I usually trend to watch movies from actors that I love. Like I've seen every Tom Hanks movie. Like there's not a Tom Hanks movie I haven't seen. I don't think there really isn't. So
I haven't seen a lot of his recent stuff, like the Mr. Rogers.
Does he have recent stuff?
Yeah, he did that Mr. Rogers movie within the last few years.
I actually haven't seen Mr. Rogers. I saw Sully though. Sully wasn't bad about that was
pretty good.
Plane crash and stuff.
Well, and I didn't know this until the end, but apparently the way that the whole thing went down with the investigation was not quite how it wasn't like they kind of made that a little bit, dramatized it. It wasn't that confrontational.
Right.
But okay,
Tom Hanks had some clunkers back in the day though that we never talk about. Like
Yeah.
what's that? Money Pit. Money Pit is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, but it
Oh,
was pretty
yeah.
funny a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I didn't like The Burbs. I thought that was really lame.
The
That
Burbs.
was
Oh
really
yeah, I've seen
lame.
the Burbs. I've seen the Burbs. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But he's great.
Mm,
Tom Hanks is great.
yeah.
What a national treasure.
Yep. There's a couple of these Nicolas Cage's best work for sure. Let's
Yes.
see here. We got to wrap up here, Ryan. So I just want to get these last
Okay.
couple here.
Sounds good.
Here's speaking of movies. In terms of pure awesomeness, which do you rank higher, Roadhouse or Cobra? I never saw Cobra, and I thought Roadhouse was overrated.
I
Yeah,
have
it was
I've
okay.
also not seen Cobra, and I liked
That's a
Roadhouse.
Sylvester
I've never seen
Stallone
Cobra
movie.
though. Never seen
I
Cobra.
think it's a
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone movie. Roadhouse was
Okay.
just kind of okay for me. I wasn't. I mean, I didn't dislike it. I didn't like it. It just was kind of like, all right, I saw it.
I liked it.
Cool.
It was
Couple
good. It
good fight
was good.
scenes. Move on. So yeah, pure awesomeness of the two, I'd have to go with Roadhouse because I've seen Roadhouse. So yeah. All
That
right.
would be that would
Let me
be the
see.
one. Yep.
Let's talk a little college football here, Ryan. Just as
Okay.
let's end on this one. I think this will
Okay.
be a good one to end on.
We had PGC 1122. What are your thoughts on the Alabama, LSU, and Washington, South Carolina, Southern Cal games? My apologies.
I think Washington Southern Cal went out exactly how we thought it would, Ryan. I think the one surprise
Yeah.
for me is how much Washington implemented their run game as a part of how they wanted to go at USC early. Like they really did a
Dylan
nice
Johnson looked
job.
pretty good in that game. He looked pretty
Yeah, I mean
good.
it was clear
Yeah.
with the stuff they're doing, like the toss plays. They ran a
Yep.
really great, like a well designed quick pitch play where they kind of
Yep.
faked one way, went the other because they knew USC was overly aggressive. That was about as good of a run design as I've seen from Kalen DeBoer. And he
Sure.
completely took advantage
Agree with that.
of he found every weakness that USC had and exploited it. I mean, he really did. And Caleb Williams did best he could. The USC offense did as best they could, but they just couldn't make the big stop as many stops as they needed to. And then when they had a
Yep.
chance late, they turned it over. But
Yep.
I thought that game went about almost, I mean, a little bit more scoring than I predicted. I think I was at like 44-38. You were somewhat
Yep.
close to that as well, Ryan, and score.
Somewhere in the ballpark. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it pretty much went how I thought it would go.
The unfortunate circumstance of that whole game was like that was a pretty good football game, right? Until the
Yeah.
final turnover, obviously, and all we're talking about afterwards is Caleb Williams crying like with his
Right.
mom, and I'm just like, why are we talking about this, man? Like, come on, like let's move off of this, please. But yeah,
It's
Yep.
pretty ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, Ryan. You actually had this final score 45-42.
It's
So
close.
now you had
It's
USC
the other way
winning.
around. Yeah,
Yeah, but you had the score right prior to that last fumble. Because that's
almost.
more,
Yeah,
to me,
yeah,
45-42 is more indicative of how that game actually went. It was back
yep.
and forth the whole game. I mean, it was literally both teams had chances to take leads and tie and take leads. It was not a double-digit game until the very end.
No, it was a competitive game.
I
Yep.
thought it was a hard fought game. It's just USC just
Yep.
can't play defense. And
Yes.
Alabama, LSU, I mean,
It was competitive for a while. Jaden Daniels
yeah,
did his Superman act early on in that football game. He did
yeah,
really well. The wide receivers are bananas. Malik Neighbors especially had a great game, especially early on. Brian Thomas showed some pop, obviously, because he's really talented. Jaden Daniels is really good. That offense is really good in general.
yeah.
Once Jaden Daniels got knocked out, I'm like, all right, they're not coming down from 14 back. Like they're just not, it's not going to happen,
Yeah,
obviously. It's just not going
and
to.
I think the things that have plagued Alabama all year, or excuse me, the things that have plagued LSU all year, plagued them in this game as well, including the offensive line not being able to protect Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'll say about that. My only question was, does Alabama have enough offense to score? And they did. I mean, Jalen Milroe made some great plays, and they ran the ball, had a couple good runs and all that. But that was more about LSU stinking. Here's my whole thing about it. It had an outcome on the game, but I don't know that it would have ultimately mattered win-loss. I mean, if Jaden Daniels is healthy for the last part of the fourth quarter, could he have pulled a rabbit out of his hat like he did against Missouri? Maybe.
It's possible.
But to me, I don't know how that that Dallas Turner hit on him wasn't targeting. I mean, that to me should be the definition of what we want out of the sport, where he led with the helmet, hit him right in the helmet, and then drove his head into the ground with his crown. And it's like, if you're trying to limit head injuries to both sides, that's exactly, I mean, it was forcible contact to the helmet. He led with this because they've said forehead is considered part of the crown. He led with that, had forcible contact to the helmet, and then drove him into the ground. Like every part of targeting was there on that play and no call, which is why I hate the targeting rule. Like that should be textbook targeting. And here's the thing, they didn't even review it. He was laying on the ground for several minutes and they still didn't review it.
It should have been some type of penalty. Definitely should have been some type of penalty.
I think they called I thought they called a personal foul. Did they not?
Did they? I didn't think they called anything on that. I could be wrong though. I thought they
just
didn't even call anything on it.
Absurd. Just absolutely absurd. And it just disgusts me that rule is applied so inconsistent. Like, isn't that the kind of hit we don't, look, you don't hit you don't leave with your helmet. You don't hit a guy up under the chin. That's the most dangerous place to hit a kid. And you definitely don't drive him into the ground when the ball is clearly out. I mean, it wasn't a dirty hit. It was an aggressive play, but that's the kind of aggressive play we don't want in the game. Like I didn't think at any point in time Dallas Turner was trying to hurt him. But it's the kind of play you want to get rid of and not have. And then they didn't call it.
I will say this during the better part of that game where it was more back and forth, like 28-35 and all that type of stuff, or not 28-35, but whatever the score was at halftime. That was a impressive game from like, I'm a defensive guy. So I was just thinking like, how the heck would I stop these athletes at quarterback, man? Yeah. They're wild. Like Jalen Milroe still has a long way to go as a passer, but like that dude is a stupid athlete, man. Like, holy smoke. Wow.
Here's what I'm wondering, Ryan. Is this going to be the wake-up call for Bama? Because they have not been using him like that. I mean, the previous 3 games, he had 3 yards rushing, -19 and -31.
Yeah, they need to use it more, man. They need to use it more.
So that's what could this be the wake-up call for Bama over the next 3 games in the SEC title game to say, hey, look, you need to do more to build that kid's legs into what you're doing. You flat out have to do it. It could make them a lot harder to defend. Or was it just because that's how bad LSU is? We'll find out.
Jaden Daniels can run, man. Those kids can run. It's nuts.
That part of the battle was fun to watch. It was. But at the end of the day, Bama's defensive line was going to make enough stops to where Jaden Daniels was. I don't think, even if he doesn't get hurt, wasn't going to be able to win in the end.
I liked how the Alabama offensive line played in general in that football game too. I thought they showed a lot of improvement because they have not been great early on in the season, but it seemed like Caden Proctor's finally settling in at left tackle. The right tackle's playing good football. The number 65, his name's escaping me. He's a former 5-star. Latham, JC Latham. Yeah, JC Latham's playing good football. So they seem to be settling in offensive line wise, which is good because they had a struggle early on in the year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. No doubt. All right, that's it, Ryan. We got to get out of here. I've got some people here that need to do some work in the house that's going to be really loud. So
I thought we weren't having a good conversation. You're just rushing me out of the building.
If you want to, Ryan, if you want to keep rolling through these, you can. That's up to you. Do you want to keep rolling with some of these?
No, I think we're going to call it there. Sorry, folks.
I only ask because I know you've got a sick baby at home, so that's why.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Because I know you guys could see it all. You could see the temptations. Like, man, there's a lot more good questions I want to get to, but I got to.
I was looking at it. So yeah. I was.
Because there's a lot of great questions left. Katie has a really good question left. Archer had a really good question about bowl matchup. So if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to bring it back tomorrow. Ryan and I have more time tomorrow. Where we won't have the same interruptions, but anyway,
and bring the questions to the mailbag on the recruiting show on Friday as well,
and on the message board all week, right? Because if there was something you really wanted to know and we didn't get to it today, like there was a great question about if Benjamin Morrison could go pro hypothetically, who would be the starting cornerback? That's an interesting conversation. Put it on the message board. We'll engage it. Would love to talk about it. So why don't you go and take us out of here, Ryan?
Well, folks, if you like the show today, hit that like button. Even if you didn't like the show today, hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well for us. You'll know when there's a show that's going to be coming up. Of course, me and Brian will be back tomorrow to discuss what we see down the stretch for Notre Dame over the last couple games, including the bowl game, to see some offensive outputs and some things improvement moving forward. Make sure you hit that notification bell. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, also subscribe there, hit that notification bell. and 5-star reviews are also very much appreciated on any of your podcast platforms. boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's a bye week, but the news never stops. We'll be having recruiting and team intel for you all throughout the week. Make sure you stay tapped in at irishbreakdown.com. We will talk to you again very soon. Ryan Roberts, Brian Driscoll here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.